1-2 pitch rifled towards center. Siani sprinting to the warning track. Another great catch. This one scorched toward right center field. Long run, Siani. He's on the warning track. Reaches up and makes a great catch up against the fence. This guy's unbelievable.
Those are typically doubles. I mean, this guy, his first step is incredible. He gets to a lot. The low line drives that you think are base hits, man, he gets underneath them. He plays a really nice center field, and he's taking a good at bat. He's playing the game the right way. He's helping a ton.
That audio courtesy of Valley Sports Midwest. That voice you just heard was Ollie Marmol 2 days ago talking about the value of Michael Siani in center field. And today, he's not in your lineup. The morning show did the lineup game earlier today, so I'm not ruining anything for you guys. Mason Wynn leading off. Alec Burleson in right. Wilson Contreras at DH. Paul Goldschmidt at first base. Brendan Donovan in left, batting fifth in front of Nolan Arenado. Like that configuration. Lars Nootbaar batting seventh, playing in center field today. Eighth is Nolan Gorman playing at second as usual, and then Pedro Pais will be behind the plate with Andre Palante on the mound for game one of this doubleheader. Day-night starting at 12:45 today. That is how they're lining it up for their starting nine. Alex, I do wonder if this is the start, because they're going up against a righty in this first game. This isn't some scheduled day off. Michael Siani has only played in 3 of the last 6 games. They're not going against a lefty. They played against 4 consecutive lefties, and he started a couple of those games. This appears to be the Cardinals making a decision, and maybe it's because Andre Palante is a heavy ground ball guy. That's possible. That influenced a decision like this. But this is them saying, we're going with Lars Nootbaar in center field. Now, I don't want to make it bigger than what it is, but it might mean that Michael Siani never sees the field again.
Whoa.
I'm worried about this.
Wow.
I think they're going to have to make some serious decisions very soon on how they're going to configure this lineup as they get Ivan Herrera back, as they get Tommy Edman back. And those are no longer in the, super distant future. Tommy Edman is starting his rehab assignment. He started last night. I think Ivan Herrera is probably close to ending his rehab assignment in the very near future. How do you think this is going to influence what Michael Siani's role is with this team? Because he has been, by far, their best defender, one of the best defenders in all of Major League Baseball so far this year.
I mean, I don't think this is just a coincidence that you mentioned Tommy Edman is starting a rehab assignment, and you've got Herrera coming back faster than maybe you planned, and then all of a sudden it's, Michael Siani's not in the lineup because you've got Wilson Contreras as a DH. I think they're telling you exactly what the plan is going to be, and Michael Siani's not going to be a part of it. I hate every single thing about that. I mean, we spent time yesterday talking about the renaissance that is Miles Mikolas and how great he's looked. Guys, Miles Mikolas looks as good as he does because 3 of his last games were saved by Michael Siani. If you don't have Michael Siani in your center field position moving forward, your team, in my opinion, is worse because of it. Guy is a gold-gloved player in center field, and I understand you're probably chasing offense right now because this team has been chasing offense all season. But you can't chase offense at the risk of losing a big-time contributor to your team in the defensive position that I believe is so crucial, and that's center field. If you take Michael Siani out, Miles Mikolas gets worse. Lance Lynn gets worse than what he already is. And in my opinion, you might see a little bit of a decline for Kyle Gibson as well. You need Michael Siani in this lineup. And it does tell me that they're starting to phase him out because we got a ton of guys and not enough positions to play. Once Edman's back, once Herrera's back, and if they're chasing offense, Siani's the odd one out. I hate everything about it, and I think this is going to hurt the Cardinals.
Yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of it, and they're back to having that roster logjam, which has been a problem that they had. They had that last year at times with their outfield. Now they're back with it with the roster as a whole, because if you're going to get Contreras days at DH, which they're doing today here in Game 1, which makes sense in a split-night doubleheader, well, I don't want to take Burleson out of the lineup. Well, then how do I find a way for him to be in the lineup? Well, he's got to be in one of the corner outfield spots. Well, I don't want Gorman out, so Donovan's got to stay in the left. And now it is, okay, well, what am I doing in center field? Because I want Nootbaar in the lineup. So all of a sudden, you've got Siani, that's the odd man out. And I do believe that they need to stick with this defense mind first, which they've run with from the start of the season. Even through the tough times of being 9 games below 500, they stuck with the idea of defense matters. We need to keep our best defensive alignment out there in the outfield. Well, now you don't have that anymore. Now you're starting to abandon it because you're chasing offense. This is them starting to chase after offense because they're now starting to get their full arsenal back. I'm not the biggest fan of it. And in theory, I think, okay, well, they might be able to do this where, Siani gets 1 day off right now, where you're going to put Contreras at DH and you can go with this offensive-minded lineup. But when you get Edman back, I don't know how you can work all this out because Suddenly you've got Siani that will be out of the lineup when Contreras DH, so that's at least once in a 3-game set. If they happen to throw a lefty in one of those games as well, that probably means that Siani's not in that spot there, so Edman's there. So now I'm talking about once out of every 3 games. That doesn't feel like what the Cardinals should be doing when the whole talk in the offseason, and they've done it up until this point, is we're going to stick with what our best defensive alignment is.
The sky is falling should be the name of your show. Well, for the Cardinals anyway. The Blues is different for you. I'm not saying the sky is falling at all. I'm saying that this is something that we should keep an eye on to find out what are the Cardinals going to do? What is their plan in center field long term? I like Michael Siani. I think he is a big part of what the identity of this team has been. I think a big part of the improvement year over year has been what the defense is. I remember last year we talked a lot. What is the difference between the Brewers and the Cardinals from a year ago? And we look into the numbers, and all of them were pretty damn similar, honestly. The Brewers had a better rotation, but a lot of that, if you look at the fielding independent numbers from last year, a lot of the rotations improvement from the Brewers to the Cardinals last year was actually based upon defense. The fielding independent numbers were really similar, but the Brewers were one of the 3 best defensive teams in baseball last year, and the Cardinals were one of the 5 or 10 worst teams defensively in Major League Baseball a year ago. So their improvement, in large part, has come because of what they've done defensively. Now go look at the defensive numbers for the Cardinals. Almost every player on the team rates out as average or worse, except for one. There's one guy that rates out as elite defensively, and it's Michael Siani. And if you pull that out, you better be improving significantly offensively. Whoever you put into his spot in the lineup better be damn good offensively. Otherwise, you're going from elite defensively to average in that spot with Lars Nootbaar playing in center field for a marginal upgrade offensively. That's not worth it. You better be getting significantly better offensively. So I think, guys, there are 3 guys that I can say right in the lineup every single day, and you know exactly what position they're playing. It's Mason Wynn, Paul Goldschmidt, Nolan Arenado. Do you guys agree with that? Every day I know they're playing shortstop, first, and third for the most part, unless there's an off day, DH, whatever. But generally speaking, those guys are going to be in the lineup every day at those 3 spots, right?
Yep.
So you have 6 spots remaining in your lineup. Catcher, DH, left, right, and center, and then second base. Those are your other 6 spots in the lineup. These are the 9 players that they have to choose from once they're healthy on a day-in, day-out basis for those spots. Pages, Contreras, Herrera, Donovan, Siani, Nootbaar, Gorman, Edman. So 8 players. You're going to have 2 players from that list that I just mentioned that are not playing on a regular basis. My guess, if today is any indication, is that Siani will be one of those that's potentially on the outside looking in. I'm not telling you got to love it, but I'm telling you this is something to keep an eye on. It is not the end of the world. It may work out for them. It may be that they improved so much offensively from what they were previously getting from Michael Siani, which is not much, let's be honest, that it was worth it for them. They may find out, hey, Tommy Edman is every bit as good defensively in center field as what Michael Siani has been for us. Maybe it's a slight downgrade and is significantly better offensively, so it was worth it for them to go from this to what they could have with Tommy Edman. I'm not sure of that, though. I'm certainly not sure of it. And when you look at what Tommy Edman has been in the past, it's okay offensively, and it's been good defensively. I'm fascinated to find out how they deploy these guys, man.
If you don't want to be Chicken Little, that's fine. I will. I will say the sky is falling with this because I don't understand, and we've been talking about it. Oh, the Cardinals are the best team in the National League since Mother's Day. The Cardinals are the best team in Major League Baseball since Mother's Day. And you're going to break up what got them to be the best team in Major League Baseball in the National League since Mother's Day, and that's defense. Yes, your pitching has been awesome this year, but I'm going to give a lot of credit to the defense making your pitching awesome, and a lot of that credit is deservedly thrown towards Michael Siani at taking care of center field. I'll give credit to the offense, but you've been chasing offense since the first day of the regular season. It's not going to change because Ivan Herrera is healthy now and we could throw him into the DH position. It's not going to change because Tommy Edman splits against one side of the pitcher is coming back into the lineup and we could throw him out in center field. You stick with what made you this good. You've been consistent now for almost 3 months. And you're just going to say, hey, because we're getting healthy, the guy that has been the best center field in Major League Baseball, we're going to sit him on the bench because Tommy Edman's back or because we need Ivan Herrera's bat in the lineup. I'm sorry, but that gets you away from what got you to the position you're in right now in terms of chasing the Milwaukee Brewers, and I don't understand backing away from that.
I feel like people are saying, hey, this is a doubleheader. Yeah, the last time they had a doubleheader was on June 26th, and they played Michael Siani in center field for both games. Like this is an outlier. This is new. Michael Siani played almost every single day except for against lefties for a really long time for this team. And now suddenly they're going back to the Lars Nootbaar experience in center field today. This is noteworthy, guys. I'm not telling you that it is the end of the world. I don't even know that it's the wrong decision. I think it's entirely possible that you look at this a month from now and say, man, Michael Siani saved their bacon, and it's awesome what they got out of him for a couple of months, and it was great to get it out of him. But now Michael Siani's down in AAA, and we're seeing what it looks like with an outfield that they expected to have on opening day when they called him Michael Sinise. You guys all remember that. John Mozeliak didn't even know who the guy was. And, man, Newt's done a pretty decent job in center when asked to do so. And Tommy Edman's been awesome in center field against left-handed pitching. That is very much in the range of outcomes. But it's also possible that they take a massive step back defensively in center field. They no longer have an elite aspect to their team other than their bullpen, and that could be a problem for them if they continue chasing offense. We saw them chase offense a year ago, and it bit them in the ass. If they do that again this season, I will be curious to see what it looks like. Again, I'm not trying to tell you that this is the end of the world. I feel like our YouTube chat is going nuts right now, saying that I'm like losing my mind. I'm not. But I absolutely think we can listen to their actions more than their words. And their actions today and recently, honestly, have told you, hey, this is something that we are looking at. We might go something different. And then I read this earlier today from Katie Wu over on The Athletic about Tommy Edman, what his role will be when he returns, guys. She said there's no telling how long a rehab assignment will be for Tommy Edman. A return right after the All-Star break would be ideal given the amount of time that he's missed. The Cardinals won't set its firm timeline, though. When he does return, St. Louis plans to use him as a super utility option where he'll play in center field against left-handed starters and roam the corner outfield and middle infield spots against right-handed hitters. I don't love the idea of him in the corner outfield. I don't think that's necessary. Middle infield spot against right-handed hitters, sure. I still think Nolan Gorman is better defensively than what people give him credit for, but whatever. Cool. And they are also out there saying publicly, we need a right-handed hitter that can play in center field.
Well, in Marmol, John Den tweeted out, Tommy Edman's playing 5 innings in center field for AA Springfield today.
Yeah, again, this is something worth monitoring, guys. It is. I think there's a better chance than not that Michael Siani is not on this roster a month from now.
And that's where I really get concerned with it.
I think that's a very real possibility because when you look at the guys that they're getting back and you look at the way that the roster is currently situated, the path of least resistance is probably Michael Siani and Dylan Carlson going down. That's their path of least resistance because otherwise they have to DFA one of Brandon Crawford or Matt Carpenter. And I just don't think they're going to do that. I think they're going to play the roster math game and send those guys down to AAA. And they'll be optioned down, and then whenever they need them back up, if somebody were to get hurt, they'll be able to call them back up to the big league level.
And that's where I get pre-mad. And maybe they prove me wrong, and Michael Siani is still playing center field. But allow me to get pre-mad by a Cardinals team that has a tendency of doing things like this in the past, where something is working well for them, and they say, yeah, but we can't ruin the good vibes, so let's just send these guys down, and we'll be fine. We've got guys who could do that position.
I'm okay with the idea of let's explore if you can get more offense out of center field by putting Newt out there, putting Edman in there against lefties when he comes back. I will not accept the idea that Crawford's still on the roster when they're completely healthy. Because Edman can be your backup.
He's probably going to be.
He's going to be.
Edman is your backup shortstop that plays a better defense at short than Brandon Crawford does at this point in his career. And Michael Siani can, even if he's not in the lineup, can become a late inning guy that you bring in, and then you can get your best defensive hands team out there once you get to the 7th inning and beyond.
Somebody on the text line said, BK, I agree this is something to monitor, something worth watching, but what do you think they do with Carlson? I think he's optioned or traded.
Yeah,
I agree. Like one of those two things is very likely to happen.
I don't think he's on this team post-trade deadline.
He's Alex, that's T-Bone on BK. We'll get the national perspective on the Cardinals, what their plans are as we get closer and closer to the Major League Baseball trade deadline. JP Morosi will join us coming up at 11:30. Looking forward to talking with him. You guys can get involved. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line to do so. You can check us out on YouTube as well. YouTube.com/101ESPN STL. That is where you can go for the graveyard chat. Coming up next, I mentioned the Cardinals need a right-handed bat according to the team. I'm not sure I agree with that sentiment. We'll tell you why next here on 101 ESPN.
In the air, down the left field line. It's gone! Second home run of the rehab assignment for Herrera, and he ties the ball game with a solo shot in the 8th inning.
With Alex and T-Bone on BK, you got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. That's what it sounded like the other night as Ivan Herrera hits another home run in his rehab stint. And guys, Ivan Herrera's getting close. Jeff Jones tweeted out just a little bit ago. Ollie Marmol said that he's planning to meet with head trainer Adam Olsen in the next day or so about where Ivan Herrera is at physically. If all of that checks out, it becomes a baseball decision on if or when he rejoins the big league club. I would assume it's a win, not an if. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but I suppose if it is if he's going to return up to the big league club, that would explain why they're looking for a right-handed bat. I've just kind of been of the opinion that Ivan Herrera could be that bad. He's been good for you. I don't think you need a whole lot more flexibility with your bench, to be totally candid. You've got guys that can kind of play all over the place with Tommy Edman whenever he returns, and Donovan. Gorman gives you a little bit of flexibility in that regard. Like you don't, Nootbaar can play anywhere in your outfield. I don't know how much more flexibility you need on your bench, so having 3 catchers for this specific roster is not as punitive as it would be for many other teams. A lot of other teams, if you're carrying 3 catchers, you're screwed. Like you have almost no way to really maneuver yourself. This team, I don't feel that way about. So I'd like to see him back with the big league club. And when he returns, my guess is Dylan Carlson is the one that ends up getting optioned down to AAA. I think that's the way that you can make it work easiest.
Or Michael Siani.
Yeah. And Herrera just becomes that right-handed bat that they've been lacking. Maybe that becomes a DH against left-handed hitters. It becomes a guy that can come off of the bench and pitch hitting situations. What do you guys view as Ivan Herrera's immediate future, though, with the team? Because he's not your catcher. I think they very clearly have shown you that.
Yeah, no, he's not your catcher. I think that is Wilson Contreras and Pedro Pajes. And I think he's exactly what you just said. I don't look at it as a third catcher. I look at it as he's your right-handed bat off of the bench. He's the DH and Contreras needs a day off. He's the guy that late in games, if you need a pop, you've got Ivan Herrera. You can sit there, and we talked with Katie Wu yesterday about this, of how the Cardinals are really searching for a right-handed bat to fill into this void of lefties. Are you going to find somebody that's better that you can realistically acquire than what Ivan Herrera has been for you this season? I'm not so sure you're going to be able to accomplish that, because the guy has the power. He has the ability to work a strike zone if he has to, and he looks like he can handle major league pitching. Heck, he's done it all the way up until his injury and then the rehab assignment. So you can keep looking for a right-handed hitter all you want, but unless I'm getting somebody that's pushing one of my everyday starters out of their starting spot, I don't know why you're going to go out there and search for another right-handed bat when Ivan Herrera can do that for you.
Yeah, I'd at least like to see them, when he's ready, be called up and give him some runway. You know, give him until about the trade deadline to find out, can he be that right-handed bat? Because my assumption is that they're looking for someone that's going to hit against lefties. Now, maybe that changes. If they're starting Tommy Edman in center field, who are you pinch hitting for in this lineup? Maybe it's Tommy Edman against a righty. So then you look at Herrera's splits and you go, okay, he's 14% above league average against right-handed pitching this season. So, okay, that makes sense. Now, where it is against, if it's lefties, which again, I don't think it would be, because it sounds like what we've talked about, Siani seems like he's either going down to the minors or is going to be on the bench, worst case scenario. Well, against lefties, so Herrera's below league average, 16% below league average against left-handed pitching. So I don't really want him pinch hitting for anybody, I guess, at that point, unless it was Michael Siani. But again, if he's not in the lineup, who are you pinch hitting for? You know, unless he's getting a start at DH over like an Alec Burleson.
And he does not have significant splits in his history. Like in the minors, he's been good against both righties and lefties. So it could just be a small sample thing so far this year.
But what T-Bone just said is why I'm not going to go out there and search for a right-handed bat to trade.
I'm with you.
You're not coming in anywhere in a game that we can realistically use you. So why not just keep a guy who's 24 years old and let him have a little bit of a runway as a bench bat and as a, hey, you get some DH opportunities when we need you in there.
That's kind of where I'm at.
But this is where it comes to where, like, their actions from last year are starting to emerge here with Herrera. Because look at Juan Yep as an example. Now, he struggled last year in his small sample size, so it kind of made sense why they non-tendered him a contract. But why did he not play a lot last year? Why do they keep Luke and Baker down in the minor leagues? One, probably because he's not a major leaguer.
Yeah, Luke and I'd feel like it's a different
any
story.
player that has not had a position, like a Moises Gomez, guys that they won't even try. Why? Is it because they don't want guys that are positionless? They don't believe in the true
unless
like DH
veteran.
type. Yeah, unless
because
you're a
Matt
veteran, like Carpenter.
Isn't
but
playing anywhere.
They would do the whole argument of, oh, look what he provides in the locker room. I wouldn't hear that crap. But,
hey, best team in the National League since Mother's Day. He's providing
not because
it.
of Carp, but
You're
whatever.
right.
But that's where I think they're back on Herrera, where he's positionless. He does not really have a role for us, and I think that's where if they do decide to keep him in the minor leagues, which I'd be shocked if they did, but if they do decide that, it goes back to what they've always been saying with their actions is we don't want a guy that's on this roster that's positionless.
I hear it, but if they go out there, like, who are you getting that is a right-handed hitter? This is where I'm struggling is, like, there's not a lot of guys out there, and you're going to have to give up an asset for a right-handed hitter, and you might already have one on your roster. And the guy that you're bringing in is almost certainly not playing on a regular basis. So while he can play a position, he's positionless for this specific team, unless you're making a significant upgrade, in which case, like, you're giving up a big-time asset for a right-handed bat that's going to play a couple of times a week? Really? That's what you're doing for this team? Just spend those assets on pitching. Well, I would rather just go out and get a better reliever or a better starting pitcher by using those exact same assets than what you would have to give up to get the right-handed hitter, and then just utilize Ivan Herrera in this role. At a minimum, hey, man, you got 3 weeks right now to find out what you have in Ivan Herrera. Might as well go ahead and spend the time doing so, because we know what they think of Dylan Carlson. They very clearly do not view Dylan Carlson as somebody that can help this major league club. So send Carlson down. He's not going to play on a regular basis now that Nootbaar's back. Go ahead and call up Ivan Herrera, find out what he can do in this role, and if he fails, if he does not perform, well, hey, man, you had 3 weeks to be able to show us what you could do in this role. Now we're going to have to go out and we're going to potentially even trade Ivan Herrera. Maybe. We'll see what happens there. And we need to go out and find a right-handed bat who can thrive in this role. That's fine. No problem. But in the next 3 weeks, I would like to see them give Ivan Herrera an opportunity. Because so far, I've been pretty impressed by what he's done at the plate. Defensively, obviously his arm is a liability. You can't have him back there right now defensively. Cool. But offensively is somebody that I do think can help you. With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Speaking of the trade deadline, we're going to get the latest with Jon Morosi next year on 101 ESPN.
Terrahedric's Near Day Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Cardinals have a split doubleheader today with the Kansas City Royals. As Game 1 will start in just about an hour or so. 12:45 will be first pitch. Andre Palante will get the start in Game 1 for the Cardinals, and in Game 2 they will start Gordon Graceffo. This Sports Center update is driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
It's always a pleasure to catch up with Jon Morosi, MLB Network's baseball insider. You can follow him on Twitter at Jon Morosi. And if you listen to SiriusXM on Saturdays around 8 o'clock in the morning, you will be able to hear his podcast that he most recently recorded with Ozzie Smith. He's got a new podcast that he's working on, The Road to Cooperstown, each Saturday at 8 a.m. We appreciate him joining us here on 101 ESPN. Jon, how you doing today?
Alex and BK, I am outstanding. Thanks so much for the invitation to be on the show and the kind words about the podcast as well. So always love catching up with both of you.
Absolutely. We're thrilled to have you. Jon, we'll ask you about that most recent podcast that you did with Ozzie Smith here in just a little bit. But as you know, the conversation right now here in St. Louis and elsewhere around Major League Baseball is what's going to happen in the trade deadline 3 weeks from now. So from your perspective, as you look kind of big picture at this year's deadline, do you expect it to be active? Is this a deadline that you think is going to be particularly active?
I do, at least active in conversations, certainly. And I will add the caveat that we haven't heard a ton yet because a lot of front offices are very focused on the draft, which, of course, begins on Sunday in Texas. So that, for now, is I think, one of the main mile markers of this year that teams will say to you, we're still trying to make a decision on it. We'll get back to you once the draft is over. So I think we'll have a much better idea by early next week what direction teams are going in. But it has been so interesting that some teams that we might have thought would have been sellers when the season started or soon afterward, the Cardinals being one of them, the Astros another, have now moved more towards the buying category. And then teams like the Tigers, who have disappointed a bit of late, are looking like sellers, as are the Blue Jays, for example. So it is a time where, as much as front office people who are on the bubble have been saying to me, well, we're not quite sure yet, we need to have a little more information, I do think that the teams that are not, if you're not above 500, it really, I know the National League is the land of opportunity right now in terms of making the playoffs, and there may be some exceptions. The Diamondbacks are the reigning National League champs, and they made such a splashy offseason, and so they may be more inclined to go for it. But there are some teams that are on the periphery. We already saw the Tampa Bay Rays move Aaron Savali. So I think that there's going to be some talent available at the deadline.
Jon, how do you view the Cardinals as players at this trade deadline?
Well, I think they'll certainly be buyers, and they're interesting in that a couple things. I think number one, I expect them to be a competitive team and play better in the second half, even though they've played quite well, at least of late, just by their own internal improvements. I think Goldschmidt will be better in the second half than the first. I think Nolan will be as well. Obviously, you expect Contreras to be healthy for the second half, which he wasn't for the whole first half. So I think internally they should get better just based on their own internal personnel. And then, oh, by the way, Edman on his return trajectory. So that's going to be another dynamic that the Cardinals hope to have into the second half. I also wonder, all of these, there's a lot of injury-related rejoinings of the roster here in the next little bit. You wonder if that creates some tradable depth to where they could make some major leaguer for major leaguer type transactions that maybe give them a little bit more adaptability, maybe help them get, in some ways, maybe add in some relief pitching. Because they've got, I think, a really nice group of position players where they seem to have developed a bit of a chemistry, I think, with the group that they've got right now. And that might be the one concern, is that they've played so well as a team that how do you then bring in the players that you want to have back, certainly, without interrupting what's been a pretty productive group, I think, overall. And I look at someone in center field like Siani, who I think is an elite defender. He's not going to hit a ton, but we've seen some of the catches that he's made, and that is worth it. I think when you've got I think in some ways Siani becomes an even better player for you if the rest of your lineup is hitting like they should. If you can carry his bat in the lower part of the lineup because he's just that good defensively, if you're getting the production that you expect to get from first base, from third base, in different spots like that, and maybe even with the return potentially of Edman, does that create some opportunity to move Carlson? There's a lot of different possibilities there that I think the Cardinals are in a much better position, it seems to me, now than they were just a couple months ago.
We're talking to Jon Morosi here on 101 ESPN, MLB Network's Baseball Insider. John, when you look at specifically the starting pitching market, because it feels, at least locally, like that's the place that the Cardinals could most use a pretty significant improvement, who are some of the names that you expect to be available in that market?
So I think that I would start first with the Toronto Blue Jays, both in terms of a rental and Yusei Kikuchi, and then also the more controllable arms like a Chris Bassett or a Kevin Gausman if they go that route. I think if I'm the Blue Jays, I'd be much more likely to move a pitcher than a position player at the moment, just based on where they're at, and they lost another tough walk-off game last night. So I think Toronto's a team that I would watch carefully there. One team maybe it would be a little bit unexpected to see the Cardinals deal in the division, but Frankie Montas has pitched pretty well for a Reds team that I believe is not going to be a buyer at the deadline, so I think he might be available to some extent. Tyler Anderson with the Los Angeles Angels, I actually like his fit a lot with the Cardinals because they haven't had, obviously briefly, Liberatore has had some starts, but looks like he's more of a reliever now. They haven't really had a lefty starter with this group, certainly not this season with the exception of Liberatore. And really in this last chapter of the Cardinals, if you will, I'm kind of think back to Jaime Garcia and others. We just haven't seen a whole ton of lefties here in the last little bit. Steven Matz, of course, has been able to start a little bit, but of course he's been hurt. So I think that would be a nice compliment to add to what they've got, is to maybe mix in a lefty in the case of Anderson. There are, I believe, the Texas Rangers might be willing to entertain some different trade possibilities depending on how they're playing. They've played better of late over the last week or so. I don't think Max Scherzer is going to come back to his hometown. I'll sort of acknowledge that off the top. Maybe a Nate Eovaldi, but I think Max seems to be pretty comfortable with where he's at there in Texas. And I do think, though, we'll start to see more and more teams declare their intentions as we get closer. It's interesting. Jack Flaherty is probably available again with the Tigers. I don't think he's going to come to St. Louis. I just sort of acknowledging the broad perspective of who's available. Yeah, I don't think that Jack is going back to St. Louis.
John, we've talked a lot about how great this Cardinals team has been since Mother's Day. They've been the best team in the National League. They've put themselves in the conversation now to maybe chase down the Milwaukee Brewers in the second half. So I want to put you in the shoes of John Mozeliak. If you're looking at this Cardinals team, what move, not for a specific player, but for a specific position, what move sets this Cardinals team over the top for this season?
I think it would be the rotation. I mean, to bring in someone that could start towards the top of that rotation, because when you look at Milwaukee, that is where they have struggled in terms of their injuries and their a little bit of inconsistency there. They've had Colin Ray has kind of saved their staff, to be honest with you, to this point in time. He's given them a lot of reliable innings. Freddie Peralta has been there and been reliable too. Tobias Myers has been their third starter. He's been pretty good actually as one of the younger guys. But I'm just not seeing quite that same level of reliability. 1 through 5. Dallas Keuchel has come in. I think that's been a nice story for the Brewers. But I don't see Milwaukee's rotation being the mainstay of their organization as it was during the heyday of Burns and Woodruff, let's say. So I think that I look at areas like that where you could really differentiate your ball club and strengthen something relative to your competition. And I think that to me stands out. I like Milwaukee's team a lot. I think that the Jackson Chourio is going to play better in the second half. I think Rhys Hoskins will probably be better in the second half as well. I like Blake Perkins and his upside a lot as a younger switch hitter who can play center field. Third base, they've had a really great start to the year from Joey Ortiz. Let's see in terms of his ability to come back and be healthy. But I think that to me is a huge question because of how important he's been. William Contreras, obviously one of the better catchers in baseball right now. So they're a team that I think is going to get better. At least their position player group, but I think that the starting pitching piece is where I think the Cardinals can differentiate themselves And if I'm Jon Morosi and Michael Gersh, I'm going to be focused a lot on adding one more impact starting pitcher.
John, final trade deadline conversation that I have as a question for you. You mentioned Texas and Nate Eovaldi. He's the guy that we've kind of honed in on over the last couple of days. I don't know how likely it is that Texas will be trading him. They've won their last 5 games. They're trying to get back into this race. They're only about 5.5 back now. What do you think would have to happen for the Texas Rangers to be sellers at this year's deadline?
Well, I think they'd really have to fall out of this thing in a pretty meaningful way in the next 10 days or so. Certainly, it's difficult to make a sell decision when you're hosting the All-Star game and when you're the reigning World Series champions. So there's a couple elements there that I think, at least in the near term, we're pushing back on any notion of that kind. I think, when you look at Eovaldi, I do think if they really have a tough stretch to begin the second half, you could see an Eovaldi potential move. Of course, there is the contractual complication. I would expect he does have that vesting option, which I think is an interesting thing to keep in mind. I think, though, he would be a prime candidate to move if you're the Rangers, because you would expect that next year's rotation will have Jacob deGrom, and maybe you're adding in some more depth from outside the organization, and that Nate could help you get some younger talent back in the organization as well. So I do think that they would have to fall out of it pretty significantly in the next little bit, because they sort of have bounced back in a good way in the last week or so to at least give them some hope. And I think if all things are equal, when you're trying to defend a World Series championship, and if you're close enough, you're probably going to default to going for it, or at least standing pat. I think they'd have to have a pretty tough first 10 days or so after the break for them to actually go in that direction and make Eovaldi available. But I do agree with the premise of your thought that Eovaldi in a lot of ways is perfect for the St. Louis Cardinals.
John, I'm going to bug you with one more baseball trade deadline question.
Sure,
sorry, because you're the best when we get to talk with you. But it does seem like that the prices are going to be steep if you're going into the market at the trade deadline, because there are so little teams that are willing to sell. Do you think it could get to the point where the Cardinals have to listen on Jordan Walker's name?
Sure, I do. Because I think when you look at the way this team sets up for the long term, and granted, I'll take a step back and say I think the Cardinals could have handled Jordan's situation better. I also think he probably could have hit better. I mean, this is not an all the Cardinals or all Jordan's fault on this as to why he's not hitting in the middle of the lineup right now. But I think that there's a case to be made on both sides of that. At the end of the day, even though he has struggled at the major league level over different periods of time, you still look at how young he is and the aptitude that he's got, and there's going to be people that say, I want him in my organization right now. I mean, he's 22 years old. And let's remember that at the draft this coming week, there'll be guys who are basically 21, 22 who are going in the first round who have never taken a pro at bat before. So I think we have to keep the big picture in mind here about just how young of a player he still is and how much talent Jordan Walker has. But I'm with you. Especially if you're going to go down the route of bringing in someone who's controllable, which, by the way, I would encourage the Cardinals to do, because when you look at their rotation, a lot of the signings they made this offseason were more of a short-term variety, to where, I don't know, how soon do you believe Tink Hence is going to be a starting pitcher for them, or Graceffo in terms of a longer-term look, and how important can they be in terms of soaking up some major league innings over the next couple of years? I think I give credit to Jon Morosi and Michael Gersh for the approach they took to the pitching market in the offseason. They said, we need reliable innings, and they went out there and got them. Now, the question is, Gibson and Lynn, would they be able to get you 6-7 innings in a playoff start? I think we're still open to debate on that, and that's where we have to remember this is not a team that's just hoping to get to the postseason. This is the St. Louis Cardinals we're talking about. So I think there's a little bit of a higher standard on being able to not just make the playoffs but get through a round or two. And I think that's where if I'm John and Michael, I am focusing a lot on guys that could help me make the playoffs and advance in around in 2025, not just 2024, especially at a time where your division rival Cubs seem to really be in disarray. And I think there's an opportunity, with all due respect to the Brewers, for the Cardinals to get back and stay at or near the top of this division, not just for this year, but certainly in the years to come as well.
Jon Morosi is an insider for MLB Network. He's also hosting the podcast, The Road to Cooperstown, Saturdays at 8 o'clock on SiriusXM's Major League Baseball channel. You can always find those as well on his Twitter account, at Jon Morosi. John, you recently were able to talk with Ozzie Smith. He's always a great guy to be able to talk to. What did you learn about his journey to Major League Baseball in your conversation with the Wizard?
Well, he was awesome. It was such an easy and fun conversation for the hour, and I encourage everybody to take a listen to the full episode and what Ozzie had to say about his journey and what he overcame to achieve all that he did. That's part of the idea of what this podcast is about, is focusing on adversity that is faced and overcome by the greatest of our game. I think it makes it relatable to all of us that in our own lives we've all gone through tough times or been overlooked or dismissed. In the case of Ozzie, he talks about how people looked at his short stature and made judgments or determinations about what he could not do as opposed to what he could do. And I think he's very proud that certainly we know him for his defense first and foremost, but look at how many hits he had, over 2,400 hits. And I think that the way he described it to me was that his defense allowed him to stay in the game long enough to be able to learn the aspects of hitting that weren't maybe quite as natural to him. And I think that's a great lesson, that find that skill that you've got, no matter what you're doing in life, that helps you get in the door and then become a great student of the game. And that's what Ozzie did. He talked a lot about his mother and the example that she set for him. And I think one of the most important things, we talk a lot, I'm sure there are travel sports parents and kids are listening to us right now. Ozzie Smith was undrafted out of high school. He went to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo on a partial academic scholarship. So, again, in the opinion of all these MLB teams, back when the draft was many more rounds than it is now, nobody drafted him out of high school. Zero, okay? So who you are at 18 is not who you're going to be when you're 30. And it's a great lesson at a time where people are saying that if you don't make your 12U travel team, that your career is over, okay? So let's remember that with what Ozzie Smith was saying. And it was the academic piece that got him the chance to be scouted and drafted. So keep those dreams alive, keep studying, and don't let anybody count you out. I think that's the biggest lesson I got from Ozzie Smith. Don't let anybody else define you. That's why the Wizard right now is in the Hall of Fame.
He's one of the best to ever do it, and Jon Morosi is one of the best doing it right now when it comes to the Baseball Insider game. Hey, John, we appreciate the time as always, man. People can find your podcast on SiriusXM's Major League Baseball channel. They can also check out the full links to download those podcasts individually on John's Twitter account, at Jon Morosi. John, appreciate the time as always, man. Hopefully we'll catch up again soon as we get closer to this year's deadline.
Sounds great. Alex and BK, thanks so much for the time today and the invitation. Look forward to seeing you at Busch Stadium here in the second half.
Thanks, John. As Jon Morosi, one of the best in the business, always appreciate him hopping on with us here on BK and Ferrario. Want to react to a couple of things that he had to say, especially about the Cardinals as we get closer to the deadline, and hear from you. We'll get some of your questions for questions and answers next here on 101 ESPN.
Alex Ferrario with you. Now that we're past all that rain, we're going to get back into that hot, humid weather, and that is why you need to call Classic Air Care to make sure that your HVAC system is ready to take on this heat over the next few months. Classic Air Care has been making people comfortable since 1926, and I talk about them because I've used them in both of my houses. The first one that my wife and I purchased back in 2016, and the one that we live in now. My family has been using them for a long time in terms of their maintenance program. When things are wrong with our HVAC system, they're able to come out, tune it up, take care of it. And just purchasing a new HVAC system, my dad went through the whole process with Classic Air Care. They've got financing available for you if you're looking at that. Plus, there's plumbing options with Classic Air Care. They do everything. They've got knowledgeable technicians. They're able to get out there quickly. When my HVAC went out a couple of weeks ago, called them on Saturday. They were out Monday morning looking at it and trying to get it up and running for us. So give them a call today. Tell them Alex Ferrario sent you, or you could book online, Classic Air Care. That's classicaircare.com.
With Alex and T-Bone on BK, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers. We will get some of those here in just a moment. Jon Morosi, if you missed it, just joined the show a little bit ago. Alex, I feel like the biggest thing that I took away from our conversation with Morosi is that he basically views this trade market the same way that we have so far. It's hard to really determine who the sellers are. And honestly, if the Rangers aren't selling at the deadline, that's the team that I would circle. If they're not, the starting pitching market becomes really thin for the Cardinals.
Say it with me, T-Bone. You say Kikuchi! JP Morosi just lets that one fly. My bigger thing
Tyler Anderson is totally going to be a Cardinal.
God, don't.
It's going to happen. We all know it.
And Kikuchi?
No, God, no.
Like, we know how this team's going to go. They're going to get Tyler Anderson and Pilar. They'll do that. That'll be the move.
I
will hate this team if that is their trade deadline.
I mean, Pilar's had a good year.
I don't care.
Really
Michael
good May,
Siani's been fine. I don't need Kevin Pilar.
At least Pilar's retiring at the end of the year, so you know he's not coming back.
Yeah, well, the Cardinals will be like, yeah, but hey, we'll get you a red jacket if you do one more year.
It's so sad that that's so going to be
No,
their
he
deadline.
basically just had a hot month. In May, he hit 400, and in April, he hit 160, June, he hit 205, and in July, so far in 4 games, he's hitting 083. But he had a really good month.
If that is this team's offseason, I'm once again off of that conductor hat train.
Very possible.
Yeah, that's terrible.
I'm looking at his splits. I really hope he's bad against lefties.
He's amazing. He's had an OPS of 1,000 against lefties.
Oh, God, he's so going to be a Cardinal.
He's going to be. That's what they're going to do. Yep. I'm just telling you, be prepared. They're going to trade for Tyler Anderson and Kevin Pilar and say, we got a guy that can hit against lefties. He can play in center field if we need him to. We got a left-handed pitcher that can be a part of our top 4 in a rotation for the postseason. Look at his ERA.
And I'm just telling you, be prepared for curmudgeon Ferrario to return, because I am so done with this team if that's the move that they deem how we can win this season. It's crap. That's what that is.
Tyler Anderson is exactly who the Cardinals are going to be.
Yeah, and I can't wait for that 2.5 ERA to be blown up into like a 4.9 ERA.
Like a 5 in the second half.
Yeah.
If that's their move, I don't want to ever hear another conversation about Mo caring about his legacy.
All right, like 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers. From the 314, guys, why not play Tommy Edman at second and make Gorman the main DH? T-Bone, I think you have some thoughts on this.
Yeah, I think Gorman, I don't want to take Gorman and make him just a designated hitter because I think he's excellent defensively. He may not have the range that Tommy Edman has, but he's got one of the best arms on the team. I'd say probably second on the team as a whole behind Mason Wynn, and that's what makes them able to turn such great double plays. I mean, look at the double play he turned in the last game of that National Series. Makes a nice play getting to the bag, has to reach out, corral it, and then get a strong throw on it, too, to turn that double play in the 9th inning of what was a 6-0 win. He's excellent at turning the double play. He's got a cannon of an arm. I do not want to take him out of a position. I want him playing defensively at second base. I think he can potentially someday, not this year, but someday win a Gold Glove at second.
I think he's pretty good. I think the arm gets underrated. It's like in the outfield, I think we overrate the impact of arm, and on the infield, I think we sometimes underrate the impact of an arm. And at second base, like, he doesn't have the best range. We know that. And he's not going to make every play. But I think he's mostly been pretty good there. I think we've underrated his defense a little bit, especially given what the improvements have been this year. Are there occasionally the errors? Yes, he had that 2-week stretch where it was just weird. It was just weird defensive plays. But the whole team had like a 2-week stretch where stuff was weird. I wouldn't play Edman at second base because I want Nolan Gorman in the lineup every day, and I want him primarily playing at second. I think that's his long-term position. It's for this year and for the future. Like, he's your guy. He's your second baseman.
That's what I was going to say. Do you believe that long-term Tommy Edman is a part of this team?
No.
Then why would you take a guy who is supposed to be a cornerstone of the future of your organization, and you've got a position that you've been working on with him for 3 years? Why would you take him out of that and put Tommy Edman there? Yeah. That makes no sense to me.
All right, from the 618, would Donovan or Edman have value as a trade for pitching? I think both would, yeah.
Yeah. I think Edman could get you a bullpen arm. Donnie could be part of a package to get a...
I'm not trading Donovan. Like, he's
I'm not either.
Untouchable for me.
But I think if they were open to it, you could probably get a number 2 starter with Brendan Donovan as part of probably a package.
I'm more willing to listen to a Jordan Walker conversation than I am Brendan Donovan, as it stands right now.
The other guy that you're willing to listen on is Lars Nootbaar, and I want to talk about that coming up next. Should Lars Nootbaar be considered a trade chip for the Cardinals as we approach this year's deadline? Alex thinks that maybe he should. The Fast Lane had some interesting thoughts on that as well yesterday. We'll get into him next year on 101 ESPN. Hey, it's BK for my friends over at Victory Men's Health. You can check out their 4 great locations across the St. Louis area today, or you can check them out right now at victorymenshealth.com. If you've been dealing with some unwanted weight gain, you've been trying to lose it, and you just can't find a way, they can help you out over at Victory Men's Health. They also help out with low testosterone. If you've got any potential vitamin deficiencies, they can help you out with that. That's what they did for me. I went over there, booked my appointment online just like you would, going to their website, victorymenshealth.com, put in my name, email, phone number, told them a little bit about what I was dealing with. I said, hey, can you guys unlock my inner champion? And that is exactly what they've done. They've got me hooked up with some B12 vitamins. They got me hooked up with vitamin D, a new multivitamin that I'm taking from them as well. They can do the same for you. Victory Men's Health, 4 great locations across the St. Louis area. It is super easy to go ahead and book your appointment today. Erectile dysfunction, testosterone, weight loss, vitamin deficiencies. They can help you out with all of that and unlock your inner champion at victorymenshealth.com. With Alex and T-Bone on BK. So I was listening to the Fast Lane yesterday, and I thought they had a really good conversation to open up their show. They were talking about the Cardinals' identity, where they're at right now, where they need to be. And they talked a lot about the defensive value of having somebody like Michael Siani in center field. And in fact, they actually recommended, hey, you should put Siani in center and Tommy Edman at second to give you the best defensive lineup possible. And then they talked about what that would mean around them and what the trade chips could be for the Cardinals as we get closer to the deadline. Thought this was an interesting conversation from them.
Would you trade, I know we talked about Tommy Edman, would you rather trade Tommy Edman or Lars Nootbaar?
Nootbaar.
I think you get more for Nootbaar, too.
So do I.
Yeah.
And I don't know if the guy can stay healthy. It's why I would have traded Tyler O'Neill, just like they did. And I realized that Tyler O'Neill has looked very good at times. He's also made, 3 trips to the injured list?
Yes.
At some point, you have to say, I can't trust you to be on the field. I know what you can do. when you're on the field, but I don't know if you're going to be on the effing field.
Okay.
Oh, he threw the effing in there.
Wow.
Way to go, Stoltz.
I think it's a really interesting discussion to have. I think it's worth having, honestly. I am firmly against trading Lars Nootbaar, though. Firmly against it. And I think it's a very different conversation than Tyler O'Neill for me. And the reason why is because Tyler O'Neill wasn't very good when he was healthy. I think this is something that we need to differentiate between the two players. They both have injury issues. Like Lars Nootbaar at this point feels like he is injury prone. He's played 108, 117, and so far this year just 40 games out of the 90 that they've played. So he's going to play 110 or fewer games this season once again. He in his history at the major league level has an OPS plus of 103, 125, 115, and so far this year 108. He's been above league average offensively every year of his major league career thus far. Here's what Tyler O'Neill was. 90, 70, 99, 94, and 148 while in St. Louis. Other than the one MVP caliber season, he was a below league average hitter every year that he was with the St. Louis Cardinals. I do not think the two are similar in terms of the on-field production when they have been available. So that's where I would push back on the comparison to Tyler O'Neill. But the reason why I want Lars Nootbaar here for the long haul is because I think he has a unique value of on-base plus potential for slug. It's not what I hoped that it would be, but it's still there potentially that you need in this lineup, especially with guys like Arenado and Goldie taking a significant step back. And he still has value defensively for you in left field. I think he's your best defensive left fielder, personally, or right, depending on where you want to put him. And he has value on the bases. So I think he's just an all-around really good baseball player that I am not looking to trade, especially at the deadline. If you're going to move Lars Nootbaar, this feels more like an off-season conversation to me because the guys that you could get with him, they're controllable for multi-years. I don't think you're getting them at this year's deadline. Similar to the conversation we had last year about the Mariners trading a pitcher at the deadline. Didn't make sense. It was more of an off-season conversation. So for me, I'm out on it. I'm not interested in it. Alex, where do you fall on
I don't disagree with a lot of what you said there. Like, I don't think he's Tyler O'Neill. Tyler O'Neill was good for one season, and you should have capitalized on trading that offseason, and you didn't. Lars Nootbaar has been consistent. He isn't available at least 2 straight seasons, and I do think that's the concerning factor of it. And I also agree that I would be looking more at offseason because of the names that are out there. I don't think any names are good enough for me to trade Lars Nootbaar unless we're talking Garrett Crochet, and I don't think that's enough to get Garrett Crochet, just Lars Nootbaar. But I am seriously at the point where I think the Cardinals do need to consider moving Lars Nootbaar. You've got too many cooks in the kitchen right now. And although I think that's a good thing, it's starting to become a lot more clear of what the future looks like. One, in terms of the left-handed bats, and I know it's great to have them, but now we're talking about being softer on the right-handed side, and there's really not places for those guys to get in. And when I look at the outfield, I think Brendan Donovan has become a everyday left fielder for you. Brendan Donovan has solidified that. Michael Siani, at least now, is your center fielder. And when Victor Scott is ready, that's the guy that takes over that position. And then the third guy, if you're still sticking with the Jordan Walker front, the third guy has to be Jordan Walker next season. So I've got 3 guys in my outfield that right now I believe makes me a better team. And Lars Nootbaar kind of falls into that 4th outfielder for me. Unless you believe that he can continue to develop as a center fielder, I would look at this and say, okay, 4th outfielder doesn't really make a whole lot of sense for Lars Nootbaar. That might be the best trade chip we have right now that we can realistically swallow in terms of what we would have to, what we're giving away, but what we're bringing in return. Because I'm not trading Donovan over Lars Nootbaar. I'm not trading an Alec Burleson over Lars Nootbaar. And Nolan Gorman, although he has his peaks and valleys, it seems the Cardinals are still going to live on what those peaks look like.
So here's my thing. I think you can have all of those guys. Like, I think they can all coexist together. I think next year, and I think the Nootbaar conversation is really about the right now. If you're trading Lars Nootbaar, it's because of what they are in 2024. Because next year, it ain't hard to find spots for all these guys. Like, you put Donovan in one corner, you put Nootbaar in another, you put Gorman at second, and you put
Burley at first.
But where's Walker playing?
Now I'm getting a DH spot for somebody. Like, there's a DH spot open every day for one of those guys that I just mentioned.
Yeah.
And you can just circle them through. Like,
Donnie would probably be the DH and would be the versatility, utility guy. Kind of what they want to do with Evan when
he can play at whatever that position is. You have Arenado go down for a little while, he's at third. You have Gorman go down for a little while, he's at second. Like, and now is just the one extra bat, and that's a good thing. Like, you want one extra bat. Right now they have like 2 or 3 of those extra bats. Eventually it just becomes one, and that's a good situation to have. I don't think you need to trade any of these players. I think you can. If you want to go out and make a big splash, this is probably the way that you can go do it. I think this team has also shown an ability to win without Lars Nootbaar. And that's part of the conversation right now. Like, they went on a big stretch of playing good baseball without Lars Nootbaar being a part of it. And so I have to take that into account and say, okay, I view him as an important, vital piece to them winning. And yet they did it without him. I think if they win in the playoffs, though, that on-base percentage plays, man. I do think that is really vital. And long-term, young, cost-controlled, 26-year-old outfielder that can play any of the 3 outfield spots for you and do so capably at a minimum, that's super valuable, man. Left-handed bat, good defender, good base runner. Like, I want Lars Nootbaar. But all of those things I just said are also why he has so much value on the trade market. So I get the appeal. And if you want to go get like a Garrett Crochet, for example, I don't know that they would be targeting Noot. I think they would want to go a little younger, because if they're trading Crochet, they think they're like 5 years away. But maybe he's somebody that becomes a pillar of that kind of a deal. But otherwise, I don't think there are going to be pitchers available this year at the deadline that are going to be worth me even including Nootbaar in the conversation.
I agree with that statement. I'm not making a big trade this trade deadline because I don't think there's anybody that profiles as a number 2 to make a trade for. I think you're trading for a ton of dudes who at best are looking like 3s for you, but probably are more 4s. And I'm not going down. I'm going down more of prospects that don't hurt my future path this trade deadline, that I'm giving up what a future trade is going to look like. But I just don't know how many untouchables are on this team right now, and that's why I'm going to keep my ears open for every single possibility. And like, if you look at the free agent market next year at starting pitchers, there ain't a whole lot that gets you excited in terms of you either are going to pay a ton of money for like a Garrett Cole or a Blake Snell or a Corbin Burns, or you're going to get kind of what you just got this season, which is fine.
Or you trade in the offseason.
Maybe, and that's why I'm considering Lars Nootbaar. What I'm saying is I have to consider the Lars Nootbaar trade because every other option in terms of upgrading starting pitching does not look good.
Yeah, I don't think he's a deadline conversation. And as much as I am kind of with you, BK, I kind of want to hold on to him, but I'm willing to at least listen when we get to the offseason, because you're right. There's not going to be a lot of guys at this year's deadline that is worth the price of a Lars Nootbaar, because then you're going to be overpaying for somebody. And those guys that you're talking about come with a lot of control and probably aren't being moved at this year's deadline. But the reason I want to keep him is, like, when I look at the Cardinals lineup, how it is constructed today, and look, that's going to change next year at certain levels of this, but I don't have, like, do you believe in Alec Burleson's on base? He doesn't get on base at a great clip, and he's hitting 2 in your spot today. His on base is driven by average. Yep. Mason Wynn's on base, driven by average. And maybe Wynn's going to be a 270, 280 hitter that can have that 330 on base. The only other guy that's best at getting on base is Donnie, and Nootbaar can do what Donnie does. He can get on base by taking walks, but he also slugs a little better than Brendan Donovan.
I feel like the pitchers that get brought up when you talk about, like, hey, you could trade Lars Nootbaar, they're the Seattle guys for the most part.
Yeah, and
they're not trading them.
Well, and you're not getting the big one from Seattle anymore after his season this year. Your chance to get him was last year.
And even if you were, it's certainly not coming at the deadline. Like, they're in the race right now. If they had fallen out of it completely and they wanted to overhaul their roster, like, maybe you could have that conversation. But they're not. They're not out of it. And so they're going to be trading prospects. They're in the same position you're in, where they don't want to pull from their major league roster to be able to improve their major league roster. Now you're robbing Peter to pay Paul. You want to pull from your minor league system in their situation to be able to upgrade what you already have that is good in their rotation at the big league level. So I don't think that it makes sense. So somebody on the text line, 314-399-9646, asked, what is a fair question? Okay, if you're not trading Nootbaar, though, you're not trading Burleson, you're not trading Donovan, you're not trading Gorman, who are you willing to deal at this year's deadline? I'm looking at more young players. Like, I'm looking at Ivan Herrera. He's somebody that I don't love the idea of trading him, but if you need to go out there and if you have the opportunity to make a splash and you're getting a legit pitcher in return, Ivan Herrera is somebody that I would listen on. Like, I can see how he has become a bit of an extraneous asset. Like, you have multiple catchers in front of him for the long haul. Cool, fine. I think you could listen on Chase Davis. I think you could listen on TK Roby. I think you could listen on Thomas Ajayci. I think you could listen to a lot of those AAA pitchers that you currently have that have stalled out at that level, like even Gordon Graceffo. I'm willing to listen on, and we're going to see him later on this evening. I think he has a chance to be a decent Major League starter.
Cesar Prieto's name starting to pop up a little bit more, too.
Sure. Andre Palante, I think, is a guy that you probably listen on at the trade deadline this year. I think he's shown he's a capable Major League starter. If you had him as your number 5 starter going into opening day of next year, I wouldn't think that's the worst thing in the world. I think another team, though, that would be a little bit more cash-strapped, they would really value somebody like Andre Palante, especially if they're a seller at this year's deadline. Bring him in, see if there's anything more there, and see what that looks like. So you have chips. They're not great chips. There's also not great pitchers available. So I think they can go out there. If you wanted to get somebody like if the Rangers do end up selling at this year's deadline, the guys that I just mentioned are more than enough to acquire any of the starters that they would potentially be selling this year.
You just trade them TK Roby.
If you wanted to go get Yusei Kikuchi from the Blue Jays, any of those guys that I just mentioned, you can put together a package of them that would be able to get you that. If you want to go out there and get Eric Fetty, the guys that I just mentioned, they're more than enough to be able to go get an Eric Fetty. You don't have to dip into your Major League roster with these players. Tommy Edman, by the way, another player that I would legitimately consider selling this year at the deadline.
Dylan Carlson, but I don't know how much that's going to bring back for you.
All of these players, this is the pool of players that I'm willing to sell from, not your left-handed hitters. I don't feel the need to sell on any of those because I don't think you need to. I think those are guys that you're trying to build around for now and for the foreseeable future. With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. You give us 2 scenarios. We'll tell you which one is more likely and more likely to happen next year on 101 ESPN. With Alex and T-Bone on BK, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. You give us two scenarios. We will tell you which one is more likely here on BK and Ferrario. Alex, let's start out with this one. More likely to happen. The Cardinals trade somebody from their current Major League roster at the deadline. Or the Cardinals acquire a starter that you deem to be a top 2 starter in this rotation.
So what was the first one again?
They trade somebody from the current Major League roster.
Or they acquire a
top 2
realistic top 2 starter in the rotation. I'm saying that they trade somebody off of this Major League roster. I don't think there is a real number 2 starter available other than maybe Garrett Crochet. I don't think there's anybody that falls into that category for this Cardinals team. And then on top of it, if there are, you're not going to pay the price that teams like the Dodgers, the Baltimore Orioles, all of these teams that have better trade chips than you and realistically can win it now are going to give up for it. So I'm going to say it's more likely they trade somebody off of this roster.
I'll say it's more likely they get a number 2 starter because there's not a lot, but I think there are guys that profile as that. Evaldi would fit as a number 2 for me. Crochet to me is a 1. Fetty, I'd hear an argument on as a 2B.
Yeah.
So I would say there's like 3 arms that kind of fall into that. I don't think Kikuchi is as great as he is, but he's not a 2. I would say more likely that than they go out and they trade somebody off their Major League roster.
What would you have considered Jordan Montgomery to be last year?
3.
Like if the Cardinals acquired this year at the deadline, last year's Jordan Montgomery, the equivalent of last year's Jordan Montgomery.
I think baseball would have told you he was a 3.
But would we, like, locally, we would have seen that as a 2, right?
Oh, yeah, that's better than, in my opinion, Kyle Gibson and Miles Michaelis.
He'd be a 2 on your team. Yeah. I think people across baseball would say, well, that's
he started
a 3.
being 2 for the Rangers, and they won the World Series
But again, they were
last
hurt.
year.
Like, they dealt with a ton of it. Like, when they acquired him, I think it was as a 3.
The team that won the World Series had him as their number 2 starter in the postseason, correct?
Working on that tone, though, right?
No, but I mean, like, come on. Can we just...
When you slow it down...
I'm just telling you what baseball's
game
telling
2.
you. Baseball's telling you he's a 3.
Understood.
Ferrario's telling you that he's...
Whatever. Yeah, he was their number 2 starter in the postseason, correct? The reason why I'm bringing this up is what they gave up for him was a guy that was like a borderline top 100 prospect and a pitcher that might be broken in TK Roby. He's just been chronically hurt since they traded him to St. Louis.
John King in that deal too.
Sure, and a relief pitcher that people thought it was a throw-in at the time.
I mean, you saw John King at the beginning of the season. He was a throw-in.
The reason I'm bringing that up, Jordan Montgomery was one of the prized possessions of last year's trade deadline. And if the exact same pitcher were available this year, a 3.2 ERA, throwing 120 innings at that point in time.
Who is it, BK?
Anthony Evaldi is basically that guy. It's not going to take as much, I don't think, as what people are anticipating to get some of the best pitchers that are going to be available this year at the market. And last year was also pitching craved. There were not a lot of starters that were available last year at the deadline. Very few.
Baltimore was like, we'll get Flaherty.
I think it's more likely that the Cardinals end up getting a number 2 starter. I think it's more likely that they get one of like Fetty, somebody like that.
Anderson.
Yeah. Somebody like that.
You started so high, and then it was like, if you squint real hard and turn upside down, he looks kind of like a number 2. And then when you watch him pitch, it looks like a number 2.
Man. Just hold on to that. Hold on to that, Cardinals fans. Yeah, it's a great ERA.
Just wait till Lars Nootbaar is deploying center field for you when he's pitching on the mound. See how that goes.
Alex, what do you got?
Guys, more likely to happen, the Blues make a trade for a defenseman?
No.
Or 3 players under the age of 23 make opening night roster?
Who would that be? Bolduc, Dvorsky, Snabers under that age?
Oh, yeah, that one. The second one.
Dude, Frank Saravalli. Now I'm on this Philip Broberg.
Oh,
welcome to my Jacob Chicken. Frank Saravalli said that Edmonton can't do anything about this. Saravalli said, if I'm a team, I'm giving him an offer sheet right now at $4.5 million for however many years you want to go. And Edmonton's like, cool, we can't match it. So we lose a 23-year-old left-handed defenseman who's a top 4 defenseman potential.
I like it.
I don't know why nobody's doing this right now.
We don't want to frustrate any other GMs. You know, everybody's got to be.
They don't even have a GM.
Oh, well, yeah,
offer sheet them. Nobody can do anything.
I'll say more likely that you see 3 guys under the age of 23, though. The Blues don't feel like they're going to be making any moves at their blue line.
I agree.
And it's frustrating.
It's so frustrating with that guy just sitting out there.
T-Bone?
Yeah. Guys more likely to be added to the St. Louis Cardinals at this year's trade deadline. A high-leverage bullpen arm or a right-handed bat in the outfield?
I think they're going to get a high leverage arm, so I'm going to go with that one.
No, you don't. You think they're
really
going to get a right-handed outfield bat?
I do think they're also
I don't think they're
going
to get a high leverage bullpen arm.
It's got to be a look over here thing they're doing, right? Like that's what's happening.
Yeah,
they're trying to throw everybody sent off.
Yeah, because the Cardinals always pull the look over here. Get the hell out of here.
I'm going to be so upset. It's going to be a fine trade. Like, it makes sense. But
if they get Kevin Pillar,
they're going to get Kevin Pillar and Tyler Anderson. And
that's not a fine trade. That's a terrible trade.
Randy's going to be so excited. He's going to see that 2.80 ERA, and I get it. I understand it. But he's going to be like, hey, I got him.
Hey,
I got
shots. This is why Randy said you're no fun.
No, and the reason why I bring up Randy is like baseball traditionalist will be very excited about Tyler Anderson in the 2.80 ERA. And I get it. He doesn't allow a lot of runs. I do not believe at all that what he is doing is sustainable.
What's the name of the game? Don't allow runs as a pitcher.
Yeah, we're going to put Lars Nootbaar in center field for us.
Low score wins. Good for them. But that's what they're going to do, and it's going to be amazing.
I still think it's going to be the right-handed bat in the outfield rather than I do a high leverage arm. I think they'll add to the bullpen, but I don't know if they're going to
come to the realization that they shouldn't do that.
Well, of course they're not. It's the Cardinals.
I hope not, because like you're already seeing like flashing alarm bells going off. Like, hey, Andrew Kittredge, who has not thrown this many innings in like 3 years, he's starting to wear down. JoJo has no swing and miss on his fastball anymore. Fernandez is your best reliever, and yet they still trot out Kittredge and JoJo in high leverage spots.
BK's guy Riley O'Brien's making a comeback.
And his rehab's been weird, but they should go get a high leverage arm. I don't know if they're going to though.
Yeah, I think they will. I think they'll get somebody kind of like the Keenan Middleton, where they fit into the 7th and 8th inning mix.
Dude who can't pitch for you?
I think they'll get somebody. They will replace what they expected to have out of Keenan Middleton this year. A right-handed arm that can fit into that 7th, 8th inning mix. All right, 314-399-9646 is the
number 5 starter
line
and a bench bat.
For more likely to happen. God dang, man.
Go Cards!
Tyler Anderson has more control left, too, doesn't he? Isn't he like another year?
Oh, goody.
No, I think he's a free agent. I think.
I thought he had another year of under contract. Let's check this.
Well, if he had another year under contract, that's the trifecta. That's the holy trinity for the Cardinals.
$13 million.
Tell me he's a great guy that you'd let your daughter date? All aboard the Cardinal train.
Oh my gosh, they're going to pick up the club option on Gibson and Anderson. They're going to have the oldest rotation. They'll probably let him walk.
No, I don't think so, man.
This will be their replacement for Lynn.
They're going to have the oldest rotation in baseball.
Hear me out. What if we had Lynn and Tyler Anderson?
And Matz.
All right.
And Matz. That's like making a trade.
More likely to happen. Jordan Walker wins an MVP in his career while wearing the birds on the bat, or he never sees the field as a big leaguer again for the Cardinals. So wins an MVP in St. Louis or never appears again in a game for the Cardinals.
I don't think either are possible, but I'll say it's more likely that he wins an MVP. He's going to see the field again. You don't trade him before you give him at least one more shot at the major league level, which is why, like, by the end of the season, I think you'll see a few at-bats of Jordan Walker. And then you go into the offseason and you really decide, what does this look like? How did it look in the minor leagues? What did it look like when he got that last shot at major leagues? And now let's see what we decide on what's best for him. You're not going to trade him at the deadline without even seeing him at the major league level again.
Yeah, I would say more likely he wins an MVP just because I think he's the prospect, and we'll see if the Cardinals view it this way. He's the kind of prospect that either lives up to his potential in your system or flames out in your system. You don't move him at all. You live and die by what his development ends up becoming. So I would say more likely he's an MVP rather than never sees the field again.
Totally agree. They can't trade him at this year's deadline. I think there's going to be a lot of talk about it because it's exciting. It's a big name, former top prospect. Like, I'm sure nationally, people like Jon Morosi, who I really like, they're going to bring up his name. And for good reason. His progression is stalled here in St. Louis. I do not think that they will or should trade him at the deadline, though. I think that would be a mistake.
Can I give you a little Max Scherzer news?
Sure.
He's on foul territory. AJ Przinsky asked him if he's willing to waive his no trade. Yeah, I'm not going to do that. We're going to play better baseball. It's going to be a moot point to even talk about. We're going to win here.
This feels like the whole, and not to get political, people asking the president, Joe Biden, if he's going to be dropping out of the race and him being like, sternly against it. You have to be sternly against it until it happens.
Yeah.
So, like, fair. That's the thing that Max Scherzer has to say right now.
New York too?
Yes. And Justin Verlander, I think, said the same thing, basically. Like, you have to say I'm not waiving my no-trade clause until the moment that you're willing to waive your no-trade clause. Otherwise, you lose all of your potential negotiating power with the team. But I get it. Like he should absolutely be saying that right now, and he probably believes it. They've won 5 in a row. They're playing better baseball right now. I'm sure he believes that they're going to get this thing back.
I'm just relaying information.
I'm with you, and I'm not shooting the messenger or anything. I'm just like,
I'll shoot the messenger. I don't like it.
When I see stuff like that, it's just like, hey, you have to say that if you're in Max Scherzer's spot. You have to.
Nah, I think you should just go out. I love toasted Raz. Let's trade me to the old Lou.
Last one here. More likely to be traded at the deadline, Herrera or Tommy Edman?
I'd say Herrera.
I think so, too.
I'm going Edman. Herrera should carry a lot of value, and if we just said that there's not a lot of value out there for a Nootbaar, now I don't think his value is as high as Nootbaar. I don't know if there's an arm out there that would be worth trading Ivan Herrera. So I'll say Tommy Edman because you could get that bullpen arm that BK's been talking about.
Who do you think is the most likely current Cardinal to be traded at the deadline?
Dylan Carlson.
Like on the roster?
Just current Cardinal. Anywhere in the system, like you think there's a player that is likely to be traded this year at the deadline. I agree with Alex. I think the most likely player to be traded at the deadline, I think they'll do something similar to what they did with Tyler O'Neill for Carlson, where they're trading him for some kind of a reliever.
I'd also say maybe Gallegos.
I think he's DFA.
Maybe, but if you could attach him in a package and somebody would take it on, I think he could go too.
Yeah, it probably is Carlson. I don't know if they would move Tommy Edman. All this talk around like having to work him into the lineup, it's either like let's work him into the lineup to prove he's healthy to trade him, which the Cardinals don't typically do, or it's we actually like Tommy Edman and we want him to be here. So I would probably agree. It's probably Carlson.
Coming up next, who are the coaches on the hottest seats entering this season in college football? We'll tell you here on 101 ESPN.
Terry Henderson here with a Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Cardinals have a split doubleheader today with the Kansas City Royals. First pitch coming up in 5 minutes in Game 1. Andre Plante will be on the mound for St. Louis. Game 2 tonight is scheduled for 6:45, and Gordon Graceffo will get the start. The Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
With Alex and T-Bone on BK, so we're getting closer and closer to the college football season, and honestly, NCAA 25 is very close to being released.
Oh, man. I will be taking a sick day.
By the way,
Arch Manning is going to be in the game.
Yeah, and
Congratulations.
I saw Luther Burden was ranked 11th overall in the video game.
He's pissed, and I can't wait.
Just outside the top.
That's absurd.
He's pissed.
He's going to be a top 10 pick in next year's NFL draft. They're like, 11th best player in the game. No, he's going to be a cheat code in this game, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
With the speed, strength, breaking tackles that he has. Dude, Mizzou's going to be one of the most fun teams to play with in NCAA 25.
I think every producer at this station is going to have a sick day the day that game is released. Rocky O, Jackson, Tanner, and Marsh.
Marsh is not going to be here.
Rocky O's not going to be here. Jackson, I don't think, will be here.
Jackson will be with Marsh.
Yeah. And honestly, Rocky
They'll
might
be playing
too.
online against one another.
Yeah, there will be 0 producers here that entire week. So Grant Francis and Bradford Bruns, get ready.
I think we should do a station tournament, by the way. Like, we should set something up where we partner with like a local bar or something and have it ready to go for an NCAA 25 tournament.
If we're going to do tournaments, let's play actually really fun games in Mario Kart and GoldenEye.
I mean, we can do all the above. We can set up like
ridiculous, you old man.
bracket.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? Everybody loves
We can do
Mario
a weekly
Kart.
tournament, like Thursday nights, starting in August.
I got
don't
like
wanna hang out
18
with
kids
BK.
at home, man. You think Thursday nights I go play? How am I going to convince my wife that Thursday nights I'm going to go play video games at a bar for 3 hours?
I don't want to
It's
hang out
Mario
with BK every
Kart.
Thursday.
BK is the kind of guy I would bust a controller over his head with.
There's a 100% chance that's true, although T-Bone would be first. T-Bone would be the first person that gets in a fight that he caused and somebody else finishes.
See, now got anger issues or
I
something?
would chuck a controller at probably both of you.
All right. So, the reason I brought up college football is because CBS Sports put out their list of the updated hot seat rankings, Alex, and I wanted to go through some of these in college football. So they have a rating system of 0 to 5. 5 being, if you don't win this year, you're gone. It's over for you. You're getting fired. And the only coach that had that distinction on this list was Arkansas coach Sam Pittman. So to give you an example of what that means, Sam Pittman, win or you're out of here. 4 is you got to start improving. 3 is, hey, there's starting to get some pressure here. 2, you're all good, but, could be right around the corner. 1 is you're safe, and 0, you're untouchable. You ain't going anywhere. Like Nick Saban prior to retiring, you're untouchable. You ain't going anywhere. Oregon, Dan Lanning, you're not going anywhere. Like those are the kinds of guys that fit into that category. I want to go through a few of these that I found to be the most interesting, and we can discuss where we are on them. So Sam Pittman out of Arkansas, I think he's getting fired at the end of the season.
Oh, yeah.
I'm honestly shocked that he didn't get fired after last year.
Yeah.
That was the real surprise here, but it ain't going to be easy for them to be able to get this thing back on track. They got a new quarterback. They lost the one guy that was actually good for their team last year and their quarterback. I think it's over.
I'm with you. I think I feel like you haven't been talking about Arkansas for some time now. I don't even see how that guy has any opportunity to keep his job. So regardless of what the season looks like, yeah, there's a new coach in Arkansas.
They have a rough schedule, too. At Oklahoma State as one of their non-con games.
Didn't they go
Oklahoma State's good.
Would they go 4-8? Was that last year or 2 years ago?
Last year, they were 4-8. Yep, they won one conference game
How
last
is that?
season.
That was Vandy, probably.
At Auburn, they've got Texas A&M, Tennessee, LSU, Ole Miss, Texas, and at Mizzou.
I don't know how that guy kept his job.
4 wins. 4 wins feels very likely.
He
for
may
him.
not survive the entirety of the season.
Yeah, I think he's going to get the Brett Bielema treatment. Speaking of which, Brett Bielema has a 2 on this list, T-Bone. A 2, which means all good for right now.
What a transition. Am I, ladies and gentlemen, Brandon
Don't
Kiley.
clap for that.
That was great.
Do you think that's the right classification for where Brett Bielema is right now with Illinois? And do you think it's where he should be right now with Illinois? Potentially 2 different answers to that.
So I would say the correct classification from the Illinois perspective, probably. I think he should be at the 3. I think Bielema's seat should be starting to warm because, and look, I'm not saying like I think Illinois should always be like an 8-win program. Let's be honest. We should have realistic expectations. And by that, I mean like 6 wins. They need to be a 6-win program that has those up years every now and then that is like 8 to 9 wins. And ever since Bielema had his one good year, everything is going in the wrong direction. Last year's team was a disaster. So far, his recruiting for 2025 looks like a disaster. And we'll see what 2024 looks like. He's added a couple of interesting players in the portal. But if it is another below 500 season, which is entirely possible under Brett Bielema, his seat should be getting really hot because his recruiting, and I know he's not known for this, it's still not at the level that I was expecting. And I at least expected it to just kind of stall out. 6-6, 7-5. It feels like it's going in the wrong direction. It's going in the wrong direction fast.
We just talked today. Isn't he in the running for a 3-star recruit right now?
I'm sure he is. Probably a punter.
Man, he won't get 3 stars.
He played a 1-score game last year against Wisconsin, Iowa, and Northwestern down the stretch. If those flip the other direction, you're talking about a team last year that instead of going 5-7 goes 8-4.
Who'd you just say? Iowa, Northwestern. Who's the other one?
Wisconsin.
Well, Wisconsin was fine. The other two were stink.
I mean, Iowa was a top 25 program last year. I hate the way that Iowa plays. I'm not disagreeing with you at all. But
that was a boring game, if I remember correctly.
15-13. It's terrible. It set offense back 100 years. But
that was so boring.
But they were within a score. Now, every game Iowa plays is within a score. So you weren't alone in that regard.
Iowa takes T-Bone's elementary school basketball coach's mindset. Just score 1 point. We're good to go from here.
100%. I don't think Bielema is going to. He's nowhere close to being fired. He's not on the hot seat at all, nor should he.
How many more years of that, though?
2.
I don't know. Can you go 2 more years without putting your
if they have the same year this year that they had last year, he's not at risk of potentially being fired. He's not. And you would get another year.
But you're never going to go anywhere. You're never going to go anywhere.
It's Illinois, dude.
Whoa.
I'm sorry, man. What do you have to carry
That's what we said about Missouri. Look what Missouri's become.
Have you looked at the Big Ten?
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine.
No, you guys play at Oregon this year. You go to Penn State. You've got Kansas as a non-con game, who was a potential top 25 team. You're going on the road against Nebraska, who should be better this year. You've got Michigan on your schedule.
It's almost like Brett should recruit better.
Are you winning a game this year? Rutgers is now on the up and up. They're starting to recruit better.
Why can't Illinois be that?
Well, because of Brett Bielema.
And again, I'm not trying to put expectations like he's got to win 9 games every year. Can I see a direction? I don't see a direction right now with Brett Bielema.
We know exactly who you are.
All I know is it's family, and the family's not doing too hot.
They're going to run the football. They're going to have a big offensive line.
They're going to
have a decent defense.
And that's
how they're going to win.
Brett Bielema's about family. I mean, the Fast and Furious had like 15 of those, so that dude's going to have a job for life.
Yeah, he's a perfectly capable college football coach. You are in a fine place as a program with Brett Bielema as your head coach. All right,
Barry Oden's probably available.
A few other coaches that I wanted to get to here. We can go through these a little quicker because they're not local ties. Florida, Billy Napier, he's a 4. You got to start improving right now. I think he should be at a 5. Red alarm bells. He's got some issues with the fundraising going on there. He is really bad at NIL, as we have seen by the fact that they, have a lawsuit against them from a former quarterback recruit that they signed that didn't get the NIL he was promised there. I think Billy Napier is gone. I think this year it's over.
Yeah,
they have a horrifying schedule this year. By the way,
that should be Sam Pittman territory. I mean, he couldn't win with Anthony Richardson. That, if you can't win when you got a dude who gets selected 4th overall in the draft, then you need to be fired.
Miami should be good this year. They've got them to lead things off. Then Texas A&M, UCF, who should also be pretty decent this year. Tennessee, Kentucky, Georgia, Texas, LSU, Ole Miss, Florida State.
Dang.
Do they win 4 games?
4 maybe. Samford,
maybe 5.
Mississippi State. Maybe they get the UCF game. And then throw in another Kentucky maybe.
Got 1 guaranteed win.
He's a goner.
It's tough. He's done at the end of the year. Notre Dame, Marcus Freeman, 1. You guys agree with that classification? Basically not on the hot seat at all.
I feel like every season has been Marcus Freeman's going to turn that team around, and they just have laid eggs. I don't know if it should be higher than like a 3, but I don't know if I'd have him as a 1.
They were good last year, but 9-3 doesn't feel like it buys you much at Notre Dame.
You should have been better. There's a lot of hype around them, and who was their quarterback last year? Hartman. Yeah, I knew it was a guy that had been around forever. You should have been better than 9-3 with him as your QB. Yeah. So I agree. It probably should be like a 3
that's
for
him.
him.
A 2 or a 3. This one is the one that I disagree with the most, though. He's got Ohio State, Ryan Day at a 3. That's, again, a 5. If that dude doesn't get to the college football playoff this year, he's done.
And he's
got to go.
All in this offseason. You got Chip Kelly, They landed a couple of either was it good recruits or good transfers that they went all in with Ryan Day this year.
K-State's former quarterback is now the quarterback at Ohio State. They pushed out McCord because they said, we've got to improve this area. They thought they were going to be able to get, I think it was the Houston quarterback, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe it was Oregon State, somebody. They thought they were going to get the kid that ended up going to, I believe, Miami, and they didn't get him. And so now they were like, what are we going to do at the position? They ended up getting, he's fine. The K-State quarterback is okay, Will Howard, but he's not great. He's kind of similar to Kyle McCord, honestly. If they don't get to the college football playoff this year, he's got to be fired. Oklahoma, they have Brent Venables at a 2. Feels about right. I feel like that could heat up really quickly, though, if things go south for them this year, at their first year in the SEC. And then the last one I wanted to get to was USC. Lincoln Riley is a 2, which means, according to their measurement scale, it's all good for right now. I think he's at a 3 or a 4. Given what they did last year with Caleb Williams as their starting quarterback, the talent that they have assembled there, dude, Lincoln Riley, I'm not saying he's at risk of getting fired at the end of the season. I don't think they'll do that, not this quickly into his tenure. But if things go south this year, he will go into next season as a 5. Like, win or you're fired at the end of the season. That's the kind of pressure that exists at USC.
Yeah, I agree with that because when you look at especially the talent he's able to bring in on offense, what's always been the bugaboo for him? It's defense. And that continues to be the case. That was the case at Oklahoma, continue to be the case at USC. You had Caleb freaking Williams, the best college quarterback in 2 years, and they didn't get to the playoff once with him. So that guy should be heating up a lot faster than it is.
I didn't get to ask BK about this one, but Baylor's coach is a 4 on there. You a little worried about Drink just jumping ship and heading to Baylor?
I think Drink knows he's in a really good position right now.
Yeah. Can I tell you the one that I'm surprised?
2 years ago, I wouldn't have said that.
You
I think
own the state if you're Drink right now.
Yeah, I think 2 years ago, if Drinkwitz was offered a better job, I think he probably would have taken it. Now he should be a 0. He should be one of the most untouchable coaches in college football right now. He basically is his boss.
You know the one that I think's too low and I think should be a lot higher, and you guys might disagree with this. Dabo Swinney had a 2. Swinney should be on the hot seat. I mean,
I don't think you can fire him at Clemson.
Yeah, I was going to say, I feel like Clemson knows who they've got.
The problem is I'm one of those that is heartless and don't care about how long you've been with an organization, don't care what your tie is to at the school. He hasn't been to the college football playoff in, I think it's 4 years, and last year 9-4, and he's very old school. He's not willing to go play in the transfer portal, and I don't think you can win that way. And if I'm Clemson, you've got the assets, you've got the money, and you should have the power to go out there and be willing to get another big coach that can go make that program take the next step. I think he should be at a 4.
That's Tanner. He's Alex. I'm BK. Coming up next, the Junk Drawer here on 101 ESPN. With Alex and T-Bone on BK. T-Bone, what do you got for us today in the junk drawer?
All right, guys, so I just saw this as a tweet, which is just unbelievable and fascinating. A tourist from Arkansas is suing a Las Vegas stripper for $38.5 million after he says she tricked him into thinking they were in an exclusive romantic relationship for 10 years. He claims he gave her
For a decade?
Yeah. Oh, my God. A decade. What a relationship. He claims he gave her $3.5 million in cash and gifts, some of which she gave to her real boyfriend.
This guy's an idiot. And this case should be thrown out before it even
who
goes
among
anywhere.
us hasn't, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I've not been.
You've never had a night in Vegas where you were like, I think
that stripper's in love with me.
You've never had that?
No, man.
Oh, dude.
You have?
Absolutely. I was convinced. She was Italian. I was like, this is it. This is my moment. It's my 21st birthday weekend, and
look, man, I thought
that was it.
I don't venture to strip clubs very often.
No?
I've been to one, and it was a
Spearmint Rhino in Las Vegas.
It was my bachelor party in Las Vegas, and I did not walk away from that moment thinking that stripper's in love with me. I went back
You
and
didn't
said,
drink enough beforehand, apparently.
I went back and said, that stripper wants more money from me.
So what I didn't realize, I was young and stupid at the time. I haven't changed a lot.
How much money did you throw at her?
So much.
$38.5 million worth?
No.
Nobody's that dumb.
Didn't have $3 million that I threw her way, but we did the VIP thing, right? Like, so you go back.
What goes into the VIP thing?
Well, unfortunately, you have to. I don't know if this is true or not, but I fell for it at the time.
You didn't remember it?
So you have to get a drink for you and for her. Drinks are $50 a piece when you go to the VIP. Again, I'm 21. I have no money. And then the song, she decided, hey, do you want to be here for another song? I was like, sure, that's great.
Are you asking me?
Yeah. It's like, absolutely. This sounds awesome. I think at the end it was like $400, $500, something like that. And I was like, I don't have that in cash. So I had to go to the ATM. I put my debit
walk
card
of
in.
shame.
And you had to pay a percentage, didn't you?
It was like a $50 fee. I was like, I'm so stupid.
Here's BK. This is my picture of BK in a strip
walk of
club.
shame.
She walks up and she's like, you want to stay for another dance? Yeah. Okay, you got money? Here you go.
I can pay you in blocks.
Just take my wallet, please. But even so, $450?
She definitely loved me.
Probably. She's probably still trying to contact you today, I would assume.
The thing with this story is that means this guy had
$38.5 million.
No, it was only
$3.5 million, but he's suing for 38.
Suing her
That's
for
right.
38.
But the thing that's interesting is, you know what part of that money probably is spent then is him going back to Vegas probably multiple times a year.
Good for him,
to
man.
go
But
see
he's
her.
getting her gifts, too.
The other thing is, like,
Stop buying gifts, man.
What I want to know, and this doesn't tell us, is like, did he like take her out on dates and he thought they were dating? Like she thought they were
They were in
friends.
love.
No, their dates
Surely
were
he's not spending $3.5 million at the strip
their
club.
dates were exclusively at the Spearmint Rhino. That's where their dates were. They had some in the VIP room. They had some in the all-access room. They had some just on the dance floor.
Absolutely.
$3.5 million dates were all exclusively at that strip club.
Love's love.
That's ridiculous.
Chase what the heart wants.
If
That's what I always
if I'm
say.
the judge of that case comes to me, I'm like, get the hell out of here. We're not having this lawsuit.
I'm surprised you guys haven't had this experience.
I'm
Where you
surprised
feel-
you have had this experience, man.
I think if we took T-Bone
I'm
over
actually
to
not shocked
Sajay,
BK had this.
T-Bone would fall in love immediately. T-Bone would be the...
T-Bone would assume that all of them were in love with T-Bone.
is the smartest guy on the show, so he would not fall for this.
You have irrational confidence in everything you do.
Yeah,
You
Well, I
think
know
that you wouldn't have irrational
You think
confidence
you
in
can hit
getting
Ryan Helsley's fastball? You think you're going to walk into a strip club and know that they don't love
Hitting
you?
Helsley's 100-mile-an-hour fastball is easier than dating.
T-Bone is the guy that goes home and he's like, that girl loved me. And then he goes to Schnucks and he buys a cookie cake and he brings it to her and
You
says,
think it's a cookie cake?
oh, yeah, well, you can't cook.
Whoa.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
Yeah, you can't
that's
cook.
not
He's going
fair.
to go buy it. And he's
Not
like, hey,
fair at all.
I brought
I feel
you
like he
these.
brings champagne the next time around.
Oh, no. T-Bone
that classy?
T-Bone brings a bottle of wine that he got from Walmart.
Bring a 12-pack of Busch Light. What are you talking about?
Oh, somebody on the text line said the amazing thing about the story is that the idiot is now being scammed by his attorney.
He found some dude in Vegas who said he was an attorney at the casino. He was talking with some guy at the slot machine. He's like, hey, I need a lawyer. I'm a lawyer.
He's talking to the Elvis impersonator, and then somebody overhears him and is like, hey, I'm actually a lawyer when I'm off here.
I need to buy an attorney. Can I do that here? Sir, this is a wedding chapel.
That guy set up outside the corner.
Sir, this is...
With Alex and T-Bone on
Can I get a
BK.
Frosty then?
Coming up next, Junior style, though.
I bought a lot of Frosties for the stripper. Am I right? High five. Meaning you brought Frosties. That was part of the date. That was their dessert.
Coming up next, which of the three current National League wildcard teams is most likely to not be a wildcard team once we get to the postseason? We'll talk about it next year on 101 ESPN. With Alex Ferrario, I'm Brandon Kiley for our friends at Circa Sports in Illinois. Alex, they have the best odds, and that's why we bet with them, because you're going to win more money when you bet with Circa Sports. They also have better lines. When you look at Mizzou's over-under, for example, for wins this year, over on FanDuel, it's 9.5. When you look at the exact same line on Circa, it's 9 wins. You can push with the 9. That's a better way to go ahead and do this. The other thing you can do is get them to make the SEC title over on Circa. So at 17-1, you can bet them to get to the SEC championship game. That isn't even offered over on the FanDuel Sportsbook. You've got better bets. You've got better odds. You're going to win more money when you're betting with Circa.
Nothing better than those odds that BK talked about. But how about this? I'm sure somebody's gone through this before listening right now, where you've been limited with other sports books on the betting and the limits that come with it and your winnings. Make sure you give Circa a shot, because they're not limiting anybody based off of their winnings. Everyone is getting that same limit, and I love it because they tell you to go check out those other sports betting apps. They know you'll come back to Circa Sports. Download it today, start putting the money in, and enjoy some of these sports betting perks with Circa Sports Illinois. If you or someone you know may have a problem with gambling, call 1-800-GAMBLER or text ILGAMB to 833-234.
Alex, earlier today, MLB Network was talking a little bit about the National League wild card race, and I thought they had an interesting way to break it down. Here's what they had to say. Again, this is coming from MLB Network.
Top 3 teams, Braves, Cardinals, and Padres. So, D-Roll, will those 3 teams be the wild card teams when it's all said and done?
I feel like St. Louis might actually win the division. It's tough for me right now. I got to let the NL Central breathe. Yes, I do believe. I believe the Braves are obviously going to secure a wild card spot. I would say the Phillies are in line to win the NL East, and I like the Padres, especially if they can get their arms right. They seem to have come together. The interesting ones to me is I do do believe Pittsburgh could trump the whole system if they wanted to get real aggressive at the deadline. I don't believe they will. I would say Braves, Padres have 2 of the 3.
Okay.
I'll leave the other one up in the air.
So we didn't answer the question at all, but
we did.
The question itself is interesting. Do you believe that the 3 teams currently that are in the National League wildcard spots will end the season in those same spots? The Braves currently have the top wildcard spot. The Cardinals are about 3 games behind them, and the Padres are in the final wildcard spot. They have a 1.5 game lead over the Mets, 2.5 games over the Diamondbacks and the Giants, and then the Pirates are 3 games back right now in the NL wildcard. Alex, if I ask this question of you, do you think those will be the 3 teams that represent the National League in the wildcard this year?
No, I don't.
Interesting.
I don't know if it's the Cardinals or the Padres, but one of those 2 teams falls out of that spot. And I think the other holds on to it, and I think the Diamondbacks are the team that get that last wild card spot. I mean, I know it seems so simple, but I look at that run differential right now and look at it and say, man, the Cardinals are going to have to really work some magic to stay there. What do you mean it's fine? It's minus 33 right now.
It's not great.
No, it's not great, man. And now D-Rose like, well, they could catch the Brewers. Sorry.
4 games back.
Beat the Brewers before I can actually say you're going to be in better position.
If they do, they're going to be right there, by the way.
If they do, then sure, I'm all aboard that train, and I'll put the conductor hat on for a second time. But if you're telling me those 3 teams, I don't believe so. I think the only team that really can chase down that other spot is the Arizona Diamondbacks because they're injured. I know the Mets are buying, but I still don't buy into the New York Mets. I just don't know if it's the Cardinals or Padres. If you're telling me both of these teams get improved post-trade deadline, like just their players continue to play well, I would give the slight edge to the San Diego Padres because I feel like the ceiling for those players are better than the Cardinal ceilings.
Yeah, I feel like Arizona's going to be a playoff team. Now, who they are unseeding, I'm not 100% sure because I believe in the Padres. And I know that what's-his-name out there in San Diego is going to be adding like crazy. Yeah, A.J. Preller's going to be adding like crazy. And their rotation is solid when they're healthy again. With Darvish and Musgrove and Cease, that's an unbelievable 1-2-3.
And then they go get Derek Crochet.
He's been awesome. Or he was awesome. He might have slowed down since.
4.2 ERA. Kind of similar to what he did last year.
Really slowed down. But I like their pitching, and that's what it comes down to me. Do I like your rotation? And I love what Arizona can be when they are healthy. And they have had trouble with run suppression, but their offense has been unbelievable, and that's without Corbin Carroll performing. So I think they are going to find a way in, and it just comes down to me. I think it's going to come down to can the Cardinals and Milwaukee fend them off? And that's who I think one of St. Louis or Milwaukee's maybe missed the playoffs this year because I still don't believe what Milwaukee's doing. And I don't trust the Cardinals' rotation right now with the idea that they're going to add to it. They need a number 2 starter for them to hold off, whether that is Arizona or to try and fight and surpass Milwaukee and push Milwaukee into this battle that I'm talking about.
So let me ask this question then. Do you think only one team from the Central Division is going to represent the National League in the playoffs this year?
I disagree with T-Bone on that. I think the Cardinals are going to make the playoffs this year, and I think Milwaukee is going to make the playoffs this year. I think these are your 3 teams. I really do. I don't know how aggressive Arizona is going to be at this year's deadline. I think the San Diego Padres are going to be highly incentivized to go out there and make a deal or 2, and they always do. They're always aggressive. And they've got the pitching. And even though Dylan Cease, like the traditional numbers aren't there, he does strike a lot of guys out. Like we know how this works with him. They've got a good rotation around him. I think they'll probably end up trading for some relievers. That's always what teams like this do at the deadline. The team that I do wonder a little bit about, I'm curious your guys' thoughts on this. Are you guys at all worried about Atlanta? Are you at all worried about Atlanta potentially falling back to the pack a little bit? I know they're playing decent baseball right now. Long term, I do wonder about that rotation. Chris Sale coming back from the injury from the last couple of seasons. Is he going to be able to make it through the entirety of this season? Other than that, like Reynaldo Lopez, what's he going to look like as we get further on into the season? A reliever traditionally, and now he's in their rotation and has been one of the best pitchers in all of Major League Baseball. I just wonder what that rotation looks like in the second half. Right now, there's no causes for concern. They've all been excellent so far this year, but that would be my one question about them.
Until I see it fall off, I can't go against Atlanta. I say this to you guys all the time. I
would bet on these 3 being the wildcard teams.
I personally believe a team that has had success in the playoffs knows how to play winning baseball when you need to. And post-trade deadline, post-All-Star break is when playoff baseball really begins. That's when the best teams turn it on. And Atlanta's a team that I would be feared of. I would say Arizona, if they get healthy, they're a team that people should be fearing because Winning baseball, it's in your DNA once you get a taste of it. We're seeing it with the Houston Astros right now. They've turned it around because they know how to win. There's going to be one team outside of this wild card that I believe is going to get in, and it really comes down to are the Cardinals or Padres going to forfeit it.
A lot of this is just which stars start performing. The Braves, do their big bats start playing like big bats? Austin Riley has been better. But is he going to be last year's version of Austin Riley? Is Olsen going to be last year's version of Matt Olson? Who are the guys that are going to end up being the superstars? Can Nolan Arenado, who just hit a home run, find his power surge?
Dang,
Deep center field, too.
I kid you not, I was just about to say, I don't believe the Cardinals superstars are going to turn it on. Well,
let's pump the brakes. Again, it's one game with Nolan Arenado.
Yeah, it's one home run.
One home run.
There's obviously nobody on base because we know he can't hit extra base hits whenever anybody's on base.
Nobody on this team can hit extra base hits.
I think that's going to be a big part of this. Which superstars in Arizona? You mentioned Corbin Carroll, not the guy that we saw from a year ago. Can Corbin Carroll recapture that form? Can Gabby Moreno be the guy that he was in the postseason for the Arizona Diamondbacks last year and not the guy that he's been for the vast majority of this season, though, so far? I know it sounds simplistic, but normally you see the stars performing like stars and then you wonder which supporting cast is going to be the best. This year it's kind of the opposite in the National League wildcard race. Which team's going to have their stars actually perform like they're the best players on their team? That's what needs to happen. And for me, I think I would trust the three that are currently in the wild card to be able to do that. Either those guys end up figuring it out or they have the depth to be able to make up for it. And I do think that the Cardinals are going to end up trading for a number 2 starter. I think his name's going to be Tyler Anderson.
all right. So
That's a different type of number 2, though, right? That's why you called him that?
Cardinals will miss the playoffs then. They will be the one that falls to Arizona.
Yeah.
What's the reaction going to be locally if they trade for Tyler Anderson? Are we going to be the only ones that are poo-pooing this?
Probably.
Okay.
Well, no, the front office is going to be high-fiving. They got a 2.8 ERA at the trade deadline.
I do think actually a lot of fans would be probably disappointed because when you think of number 2, and again, there's not a lot of number 2s out there, but people would say, well, why, if Eovaldi gets traded, why weren't we not in that conversation?
Sure.
Why did we settle for Tyler Anderson, who's like at best a 3,
if you
maybe
trade
a
for
4?
Tyler Anderson, there's no clear-cut starter for game number 2.
No. It's probably Kyle Gibson.
I can make an argument for Kyle Gibson or Tyler Anderson. And to me, you did not acquire a number 2. You acquired a number 3.
How many games do you think Tyler Anderson has started in the postseason in his major league career?
What teams has he played for?
He's been an Angel. He was a Dodger.
Yep. Dodgers, Colorado, Seattle, San Francisco.
Okay, so I'll say he started in 2 games.
I was going to say 3.
2.
Dodgers and Giants, 1 each.
1 for Colorado.
That's
what?
In the NLDS in 2018. And his most recent one was with the Dodgers in 2022 when their entire rotation fell apart.
How did it go for him?
5 innings, 0 earned runs in that one. That was, by the way, his last good season was 2022 when he was with the Dodgers. They did lose that game. They lost it 5-3, but he was good. He did his part.
Terrible bullpen.
6 strikeouts, 2 hits, no earned runs. The game before that, also good. 6 innings, 1 earned run, 5 strikeouts, 2 walks against Milwaukee. But that was in 2018. That's like, think about what's changed for the Cardinals since 2018. It's been a minute. So
I was in high school.
I don't know, man. If that's the way that they decide to go about it,
it's not a number 2.
You can talk yourself into it. You can.
That's
but
2 more playoff starts than Kyle Gibson.
It's certainly not something that I would be excited about. Doesn't throw hard.
You sound excited.
Doesn't strike anybody out. It's a great changeup.
Oh.
It's been like the best changeup in baseball so far.
You can make that work. Walker went on a postseason run with a changeup. Still has a career. He's starting game 2 today for the Royals.
Fingers crossed that they do something a little more exciting. With Alex and T-Bone on BK, NFL Quick Hitters is next here on 101 ESPN.
Alex Ferrario with you to talk about my friend Tracy Bibb, her and her team at Allstate, taking care of your home and car insurance needs. Talking with Tracy right now, flooding is a problem for a lot of homes, and flood insurance is so important. And this is why you need an actual agent who you can speak with, because with all of the prices and a lot of the flooding problems, they don't fall in line with most insurances that will cover your flooding issues. So make sure you call Tracy to talk with her about that flooding insurance. Talk with her about car insurance. Talk with her about, roof insurance for types of damages with hail and things like that. She covers everything for you. It's competitive rates. She's always in conversation, and she's always available. I think that's so important when it comes to your insurance agent. They always preach it's not a matter of if something happens, it's when something happens. So give Tracy a call today. Tell her you heard me, Alex Ferrario, talk about it, and she'll walk you through the entire process of a free non-committal quote. And if you choose to go with her, she'll get you switched over. No issues. 314-328-4260. That's 314-328-4260. It's no fib. You're always in great hands with the Bibb.
All right, let's dive into some NFL quick hitters with Alex and T-Bone. I'm BK. Alex, the ESPN.com folks ranked each NFL team based on their current skills at wide receiver, tight end, and running back. In other words, their skill position players around the quarterback who has the best supporting cast for their quarterback. Now, here's what they took into account. This is about on-field performance during the 2024 season. So they're projecting for only this year. This isn't about what they're going to be for the next 5 years. It's just this season, how good are they? They did take into account suspensions. Those matter. They weighted wide receivers more heavily than running backs because wide receivers typically matter more than running backs. That's why they're paid more than running backs. They do weigh an elite player in this group more than they do like a bunch of good players, right? If you've got Justin Jefferson, for example, that's weighted more heavily than having three good receivers.
So is it weighing players that are on, like, the players that had a good season last year
it's
on
for 2024.
So, but it's on, like, their current team. So if a player had a great season last year but is on a different team this year,
projecting for 2024.
That helps that team. Okay.
Yep. Okay. So that's what they went by. If you had to guess who the top 5 teams are, supporting cast for a quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight end, who would you guess are in the top 5 for this upcoming season?
So first team that comes to mind for me is Houston.
Houston is at number 4 on the list.
That makes sense. And I asked that because of Joe Mixon. So Mixon's on their team now because running back was the one position I didn't know about.
I would say Chiefs have to be
Chiefs
top 5.
have to be. Wow. But they don't have supporting cast, though. Like, you're talking 2 elite players.
This is not including quarterback.
I know.
Wide receiver, running back, tight end.
I mean, they've got Rice, they've got Hollywood Brown, they've got Kelsey, they've got...
I think they were 14 on this list.
Pacheco.
Yeah, but I don't know.
That feels low.
Detroit?
Detroit is ranked pretty high, but they're at 7.
Wow. Okay.
San Francisco.
Yeah, San Francisco.
That needs to be
number
1.
What about Baltimore? But if quarterback's not in it, Baltimore can't be on that list.
Not high on this list.
Cincinnati?
Cincinnati is high on this list. However, I do not believe they're in the top 5. I think they were a little lower than
Seattle?
I expected. They were 11.
Seattle?
Seattle's 8.
What about
I'll give
the
you
Rams?
a few more guesses.
No.
Nope.
It's trash.
Cooper Kupp,
Who's your running back, though?
Kyron Williams is
Kyron
really good
Williams
running
is
back.
good.
Well, yeah, but when you play 7
Give you
games,
2 more guesses, and then we'll get into the top
Okay,
5.
so who do we did? We did Houston,
You got
San
Francisco and Houston in the top 5 so far.
Man, who?
You got Lions at 7.
Atlanta?
No, they are, however, in the top 15. They were at number 10.
That feels about right.
One more guess. Top 5 supporting cast: running back, wide receiver, and tight end.
Oh,
shoot!
I don't know.
ESPN.com.
Oh, yeah, Philly.
Philadelphia
And then Miami
is at number 2. Miami is at number 3.
Okay, so then we're missing 5.
At number 5 in the countdown of the top 5 teams, Minnesota. Minnesota Vikings: Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, Aaron Jones, T.J. Hawkinson.
Okay.
Really good supporting cast around.
I
an
forgot
NFL
about Jordan Addison, to be honest with you.
And like, if we're taking into account, I guess we're not taking into account injuries. Hawkinson's probably going to miss the beginning of the season.
They took that into account. He's going to miss. I think they're saying probably
6 weeks.
for 6 weeks or so.
I don't think I can argue with any of those in the top 5.
San Fran, Philly, Minnesota, Miami, then Houston, then Minnesota.
I don't think I could argue with any of those 5.
I love that they have the Chicago Bears at number 6.
Yeah, absolutely. They should be at number 6.
Totally forgot.
I also love that we have 2 rookie quarterbacks that are probably going to be starting this year for teams that are on this list in the top 6.
Yeah, but J.J. McCarthy's trash, so that team's going to suck.
We're going to find out, though. Like, now, there have been a lot of quarterbacks that go into situations, like, for example, New England. I'm really sorry, Drake May. Bottom 5.
Carolina.
Bottom 5 in the NFL. Yeah, Carolina last year. I have no idea if Bryce Young's going to be good or not. How could you? His supporting cast was terrible last year, and it's expected to be really bad once again this year. We're going to find out pretty quickly over the next 2 years if Caleb Williams is good, if J.J. McCarthy is good. And that's really great for the franchise, but also good for us as fans to know on the outside looking in, can this guy do the job? Yeah. I feel like too often we see these teams fail the players as much as the players fail the teams.
I kind of like how you're getting a lot of these teams with super teams, too. I mean, those 5 that you were talking about, like, they are legit.
Cincinnati has a good weaponry. They're at 11 on this list. I mean,
even Patrick Mahomes, you do have at least 1 elite piece and 2 really good pieces in Rice and Pacheco.
I do feel like what we're seeing is the divide between the haves and the have-nots. Like, you're seeing some teams that are really devoid of talent at the playmaker position. Like, you look at what they have in Pittsburgh, what they have in Carolina, New York Giants, Denver Broncos, New England Patriots, L.A. Chargers. Those teams have nothing. And then it's a bunch of teams that are pretty good, like 1 through 3 on their weapons.
Yeah, man, Chargers were on that list like a year or 2 years ago. They were in the top 5, and now you're talking about the worst team.
Yeah, it goes quick, man.
Oh, man.
It goes
quick.
Good thing
John Harbaugh, man, he's going to have some success.
All right, speaking of running backs, Alex, ESPN also is doing a list right now of the top 10 players at each respective position. They just finished their list yesterday on the running back position. They have Christian McCaffrey, no surprise, at number 1. This is based upon their conversations with executives, coaches, and scouts. And then they go in, they rank them on the top 10 based on their conversations with those people. Who would you guys have as the number 2 running back in the league right now? Because I think number 1, everybody unanimously agree, Christian McCaffrey.
Like, are you telling me injuries aren't in the conversation? It's who do I think is the second best going in?
Who do you think is the second best running back in the league right now? They have Breece Hall at 2, Nick Chubb at 3, Saquon 4, and Jonathan Taylor at 5. As of today, who would you have as second best running back in the NFL?
I would say Nick Chubb is the second best. I would put Breece Hall in the top 5. I honestly would put David Montgomery with the Detroit Lions in the top 5. I mean, you talk about a guy that like carried that team on his shoulders all season long.
Jameer Gibbs in the top 10. They did not have.
And I agree with Jameer
David
Gibbs.
Montgomery.
Until we see it more consistent, though, David Montgomery's a bet. Like I'm sorry, but I don't think Jonathan Taylor is a top 5 running back right now for what his season was last year.
Too hurt.
Same with Saquon. Like, you're going to look great in Philly. Don't get me wrong, but I don't think Saquon's a top 5 guy.
I would have Bijan Robinson at number 2.
That's exactly who I was thinking that with what he said about Gibbs. Robinson, I think by the end of this year will be viewed as probably 2.
If I'm doing a fantasy draft today, the second running back that I'm taking off the clock is Bijan Robinson. I know a lot of people are taking a bunch of wide receivers up towards the top of the draft. I think you're getting a lot of running backs that are kind of falling this year in fantasy football drafts. People are pushing up the receivers more and more. I would take CMC. That's the guy, obviously. And then my number 2 pick would be right now, if I'm looking at a running back, I'd be trying to get Bijan Robinson.
I think by the end of this season, you're going to be saying Jameer Gibbs' name more in that conversation because Bijan is used just like Christian McCaffrey. He's a wide receiver just as much as he's a running back. And they use that with Jameer Gibbs. It's just a matter of what's his face in Detroit decide to actually use him or just separate his time on the field.
You know who else I think should be in at least the top 5? And I don't know if you can go any higher than like 4. Kyren Williams. I think Kyren Williams should be in the top 5 NFL. I mean, he was 3rd in rushing yards last year at 1,100, and he had 250 receiving yards last year as well.
Isn't he?
Now, he doesn't get involved in he was healthy all. I mean, he had 12 games last year.
Would you take him?
If
I told you, hey, you can have Saquon. Just you're flipping teams. Forget the contract. You now have Saquon Barkley in his role in LA. Are you feeling better or worse about it?
I personally would feel worse because I don't think he can stay as healthy as. And now look, Williams 12 games last year, but I love Williams. I'd rather have Williams.
Really?
I'm not a Josh
Jahmyr
Gibbs fan. I'd rather have Gibbs.
Yeah, Gibbs.
But again, like I think Gibbs
Travis
and
Etienne.
I'd rather have Williams.
Interesting.
I think Etienne's overrated. I think Williams is underrated.
I'm with you. I think Williams
I like
is great.
Kyren Williams.
And again, I'm not saying like
top
3. I think he should be top 5.
I would have Isaiah. I'm a homer for Isaiah Pacheco. I think Isaiah Pacheco, because of his physical running style, gets a little bit underrated as well.
I mean, I think you have to have Breece Hall and Nick Chubb in the top 5 no matter what.
Absolutely.
They've carried their teams on their shoulders, and I understand the injury with Nick Chubb, but when he's healthy, he makes the Cleveland Browns a playoff contender. The same can be said about Breece Hall.
And again, for Chubb, like I just want to see it again. You know, I mean, it's not like he just suffered like a small like ankle sprain. The dude had like multiple bones broken, multiple tears in his knee. Like I got to see it before I'm willing to buy back in.
How about our boy Alec Burleson?
What'd he do?
I didn't look up. We were having such a great conversation.
Points, boys.
We're talking football here right now.
2-run homer.
There's no points in baseball, man. It's runs.
Pedro Pages walked.
Embarrassing.
Alec Burleson home run to right center, just over the wall. You love to see it. Absolutely love to see it. Into the bullpen. So Cardinals up 3-0 right now against the Kansas City Royals in the bottom of the 3rd inning. Last thing here, Alex, as we go through some NFL quick hitters, we'll talk a little bit about the Blues coming up next. Sports Illustrated puts out an annual piece. Connor Orr is the gentleman that does this. The teams that can actually win a Super Bowl in 2024. He says there are 12 of them this year. 12 teams that, in his opinion, have a chance to win the Super Bowl. In the AFC, he has the Kansas City Chiefs.
Nah.
Okay.
Buffalo Bills.
No.
That one, I mean, I don't know with them, man. I don't know how much of a problem.
I have a hard time counting out Josh Allen.
I don't know how much of a problem Stephon Diggs was, though.
Yeah, but because I have to say I don't know of them, I don't think I can say they can win a Super Bowl. Make the playoffs, sure, I'll hear that argument.
I think I could say I don't know for a lot of teams, though.
I think I would probably be out, but it's hard. It's hard to say no to Josh Allen. New York Jets. I think they can.
I think they can, too. They got a great defense, and if Rodgers gets back to being Aaron Rodgers.
It all comes down to Aaron Rodgers.
I think they got too many problems.
Baltimore Ravens.
Rodgers ain't one, though.
I'm out on the Ravens.
Yeah, I'm out on the Ravens.
Cincinnati Bengals.
I'd say yeah.
You have to. As long as they're healthy.
That defense, I think they might
score
be
your opponent. Doesn't matter.
I'm with you, and I love Joe Burrow. You guys know that's the only quarterback in the league that scares me.
Look at the Rams.
Fan.
Yeah.
But I don't know, man. Cleveland Browns.
No.
I don't think they can win. I don't think you can win a Super Bowl with Deshaun Watson. Not in that conference.
Yep.
Houston Texans.
I'd say yeah.
Absolutely.
San Francisco 49ers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
LA Rams.
No.
No. God, no.
Detroit Lions.
Yes.
Yes.
Green Bay Packers.
No.
No.
Really?
Yeah.
And they can't win a Super Bowl.
Come on.
I don't trust Jordan Love yet.
Come on.
I don't think their offense as a whole is
You guys are being absurd.
No.
And the Philadelphia Eagles, he says, can win the Super Bowl this year. I do not think they can.
I don't think they can either, but I wouldn't rule them out.
I've got 8. I've got 8 teams in the NFL that I think can win it this year, realistically.
Can I throw one
Think
in?
about 10.
The Atlanta Falcons.
No, I don't think so.
I think they'd be like at the bottom of this list of everybody we just said. But you got the quarterback now in Kirk Cousins. Now he hasn't won it.
Is he your quarterback?
Can I throw in another?
He's a quarterback. Got great offensive weapons and great defense.
I'll throw in another. We're going to play this game.
If you say Minnesota, I'm punching you in your Adam's apple.
That would hurt. Not me, not you.
It's your weak point.
Dallas Cowboys.
No.
Oh, I did think of them too.
No.
Yeah. I agree. I think they can.
I'm sorry, man. You've got an elite level pass rusher, an elite level wide receiver, an elite level corner, I believe, top 10 quarterback in the NFL. I don't like their coach. I don't think he's very good. I also think the NFC has come back down to earth a bit from last year. I think the Dallas Cowboys can absolutely win the Super Bowl. It would surprise me.
I think the elite pass rusher and the elite wide receiver and the elite secondary player all gets wiped away because you have a below average coach. And I think in the playoffs, you have a below average quarterback.
Man, I just disagree with that. I think Dak is not the problem in Dallas. Now, I think the Cowboys are going to determine that he is the problem, but I don't think he is. I think that Dak, whenever he goes to his next team, I think he's going to have so much success with them.
I think Dak and Lamar are two guys that choke when they get to the playoffs. And that, to me, you never have a shot to win a Super Bowl if those guys can't perform.
Style is harder to win with in the playoffs. I think Dak doesn't choke. I think his team
But their
does.
personality in the playoffs resembles the same. They panic when they get into a situation that they should be calm. Like we've seen both of them. Lamar fumbles the ball, Dak throws picks in the playoffs because when they get under pressure on a big moment, they're like, what do I do? What do I do? And some of that's coaching, but I also don't trust a guy who can be calm in a big situation like that.
I think Lamar isn't accurate enough. I think Lamar takes way too many sacks, and that's a huge deal in the postseason because negative plays are death when you get to the playoffs. Like if you take a sack, I would love to see a study on the percentage of drives in which there's a sack taken that end in a punt. I would love to see it.
You should do that this year for every game.
No chance.
Yeah.
Watch Red Zone, man.
But when you get to the playoffs and you're taking sacks as a quarterback, it is so freaking hard to overcome that as a team. And Lamar takes way too many sacks. It's a huge problem for him. Dak doesn't, man. Dak gets rid of the ball quickly. He is accurate. He throws too many interceptions, and some of that is because they're bouncing off his receivers' hands, but I don't think he's the problem for them. I really, really don't. If you can make it to the Super Bowl with Jalen Hurts as your quarterback as the Eagles a couple of years ago, I think you can make it with Dak Prescott as well. All right, coming up in 15 minutes, we'll hit the rewind, but next, how much did the Blues really improve from last year? Dom says quite a bit. We'll tell you about it next here on 101 ESPN.
Terry Henderson here. The Sports Center update brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling. Cardinals currently taking on the Kansas City Royals in Game 1 of their doubleheader here today. They are in the bottom of the 4th as they lead 3-0. Game 2 tonight will be at 6:45. Gordon Graceffo is called up as the 27th man, and he will get the start in tonight's game. The Sports Center update is brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, an independent American Standard heating and air conditioning dealer.
So how much did the Blues actually improve this offseason? With Alex and T-Bone on BK, that's a question that they explored over at The Athletic earlier today. Our guy Dom.
I'm sorry, I just typed in cap friendly to look at the roster, and RIP, man. That is the most depressing thing that just popped up, is saying thank you for the 9 years of late nights. Damn, sorry. Go on, man.
Cap friendly is gone.
Oh.
Hardly knew you.
I was just about to say, do you need the song?
To the end.
So The Athletic broke down which teams improved the most from where they were at the end of last year to where they are at this point in the offseason. And Alex, the Blues are 14th, which isn't super high on this list, but they did say that the Blues improved. Here's what they wrote. St. Louis's new forwards don't move the needle a lot, but they do help push some less effective players out of the lineup. Matthew Joseph, in particular, appears to be a savvy add to the middle six, giving the Blues some depth there that they lacked most of last season. He grades out as a high-end third-line player, well worth the deal that the Senators apparently had to add a sweetener to in order to get rid of. So they view it as decent additions. Foxa, Texier, and Joseph. You improved a little bit. You're a little better than you were at the end of last season. Alex, I've said most of the offseason, I think there's a decent chance that the Cardinals get worse before they get better. That was before we saw what they were going to do. It's before we saw them add 3 veteran forwards to this mix. I no longer feel that way. I don't think they're going to get worse before they get better. I think what they've done is they've actually improved their floor pretty significantly from where they were for most of last season. Now, I don't know if their ceiling has improved a lot. I think that's going to be determined by what their young guys are able to do for them. Bolduc, Snuggerud eventually, Dvorsky, Neighbors, if he can repeat what he did last year. Can you get a little bit more out of Jordan Kyrou? That'll determine their ceiling. But I think their floor has gone up quite a bit by Joseph, Texier, and Foxa being added to this roster. So I do think they've improved a decent amount. Where are you at on that, Alex?
I 100% agree. I think they've improved from what they were last year. Now, understand the point total is not going to be the same because other teams are going to take more points away from you because Nashville's improved, Utah's improved, even Chicago has improved to where those are not cakewalks in terms of you picking up points. But I still view this team as a team that could get to somewhere between 86 and 90 points because of the roster moves that they've done. You kept your top 6, but your bottom 6 is no longer a shadow of Jakub Vrana, Kasperi Kapanen, Kevin Hayes, Nathan Walker, and Zach Dean. You're not playing those guys in your bottom 6 now. Now you've got a 27-year-old veteran who's won multiple Stanley Cups, who's going to provide you a two-way game in Matthew Joseph. You've got another big body centerman who at least is going to provide you a little bit more offense than what Kevin Hayes did in Radek Foxa. And you've got another project that projects to be a top 6, top 9 forward in Alexander Texier. You've got upside now, and you've got certainty. There's no more of this, but we're probably going to have to play some of these young guys and get them in there. No, I don't think so. The young guys either earn their spots and play better than these guys, or they're playing in the American Hockey League. And to me, your forward group improves, your defense stays the same, your goaltending stays the same. So I would say you improved somewhat off of the moves that you acquired those 3 guys.
T-Bone, one of the things that you're curious about, though, because the guys that they did add to the lineup do not impact their power play whatsoever. Joseph, Texier, Fox, I think they all combined for 3 points on the power play last year. They do
Joseph
not
and Fox
factor
are
in
penalty killers.
Yeah, they do not factor in much, if at all, to what you're going to see on the power play this year. Does that bother you? Does that concern you? Because the power play was a problem for a decent portion of last season.
I don't know if it bothers me because I guess my sense of the direction is that they're just kind of buying time until Snuggerud gets here.
Sure.
Although I would like to know what the plan is with the power play. Like, is Krug going to be the quarterback of that top unit, or is it going to be Perunovic? You know, if you're not going to have Kyrie, probably not going to have a slap shot for the power play, but can you get Bolduc time on a unit to see what he looks like? I don't know if you're going to have the same success with the idea of, like, let's just throw Oscar Sundqvist on the second power play unit in front of the goalie.
Maybe
have
Fox
a successful
can do that.
power play. Yeah, like
just put big bodies on the second unit.
I don't want to see a bunch of third and fourth liners roaming on the second power play. I want
to turn it into a penalty kill.
Yeah,
Hey, honestly, for the amount of shorting of goals they scored last season, that might work for you.
Yeah, dude, just put Booch out there and tell him it's a penalty kill.
Yeah.
Be like, hey,
don't look at the board. It's a penalty count.
Attack this the same way you would a penalty kill.
You tell one of your power play guys to just hang back behind the goaltender and, like, just make them think there's only 4 of you out there.
But I do find it interesting that they built the offseason this way, and I agree. Like, they raised their floor. But the power play was like one of the biggest issues last year, and I know it got turned around a little bit under Bannister. It was still a bad power play, and they didn't address it at all. And I don't really know what the plan is, especially with, like, quarterbacking that top unit. Is it Krug? Because if it's not Krug, are you going to do Perunovic? Or is that what he's just going to be as a power play specialist this year? I'm okay with that. I think this is the year of learning and finding out what you have. But I do find it fascinating that nothing was addressed on one of their biggest issues from last season.
So I do think it's a problem. I think T-Bone's spot on because you didn't address your one-timer. Now, you've got 2 guys, one-timers, that are going to be there. It's Zach Bolduc and Jimmy Snuggerud. Snuggerud's not coming this year.
Yeah.
Bolduc, maybe he makes the team. It really comes down to it. And Dvorsky's got a one-timer as well. So those are your power play guys that you're hoping for. But right now, you have one power play unit. The top unit I'm looking at is probably going to be Kyrou Thomas, Pavel Buchnevich. My expectation is they'll probably put Braden Shen on it. Sure. And I don't believe Torrey Krug's power play quarterbacking that number 1 unit. I think it's either going to be Falk or Scott Perunovic. I don't know if Torrey Krug's power playing either of the units. Because if you've got Perunovic, if you've got Falk, and depending on what this P.O. Joseph does, that's another guy that could play the power play for you. So I don't know what they're going to go with it. Claude Julien was brought in to help defensively, but also he's a power play guy, did so in Boston. He's probably going to work with it there. But you didn't fix that because you don't have a one-timer. And the biggest problem with your power play last year, sure, you had the net front presence, but you were way too predictable. But unfortunately, I don't think that's going to be fixed for at least another year until Snuggerud, Dvorsky, and Bolduc.
The truth is they didn't need to. Like, yeah. they probably... Again, the goal for them was not to become a cup contender this offseason. That wasn't the goal.
Don't overpay for a power play threat.
Exactly. Don't overpay for something that you're expecting your young guys to provide. Don't block them from doing the job that you want them to do, right? You want Snuggerud to be that one-timer. So give him the opportunity. And if he fails, now we can adjust accordingly. But give him the opportunity whenever he gets here to be that guy on the power play. No reason to block him beforehand. Dvorsky, if you expect him to be somebody that can help you on the power play, well, when he gets to the NHL level, guess what? There's a spot for him. It's ready to go. He'll be part of that power play unit for you. So I don't mind the way they did it. I like the fact that they got penalty killers because guess what? You ain't having those guys that I just mentioned playing on the penalty kill. Bolduc, he ain't going to be on the penalty kill for you. So your young guys are now being asked to do things that they should be asked to do. They're playing in the roles that make sense for them. So I like the way that they went about it this offseason. They pieced things together in a way that I think makes them a better team for right now and also allows them the opportunity to put the young guys into the positions that they need to be in whenever they're ready to be up at the NHL level. For Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. We'll hit the rewind. Talk a little bit about Andre Palante coming up next here on 101 ESPN.
Hey, Chris Kerber here, and listen, guys, I'm telling you, if you're like me, there's absolutely nothing fun about repairs to an appliance or something at your house. As a matter of fact, if you're going to need a repair, it always seems to come at the most inconvenient time, right? Well, if that happens to your air conditioning unit, if that happens to your HVAC unit, I'm going to give you a real easy solution. Calm yourself down, take a deep breath, call the folks at Classic Air Care. They're going to come to your house quickly. You can log in and you can schedule an appointment online as well. You don't need to be sitting there for 6 hours waiting for them either. They're going to text you when they're on your way. Maybe you haven't had it serviced in a couple of years. Maybe you haven't had it cleaned out. Have somebody come in, and maybe that might save you thousands of dollars in repairs later because it's actually been serviced like any machine should be serviced. So take care of things, stay calm, make it easy on yourself. Trust me on this. Log online, book an appointment at classicaircare.com. Air is spelled A-I-R-E. It's classicaircare.com. They've been making people comfortable since 1926.
So I feel a little bad about this. I was going to come into this segment.
BKO!
What happened?
Saying, hey, look, guys, Andre Palante, the Cardinals have something here.
Ooh. BKO. He looked
Since
at me.
we teased the last segment.
No, not we, you.
Andre Palante has given up a ground rule double, an infield single, and a double to center. And this is to the bottom of the order, so things are not exactly going
BK
according
just told me Kansas City's bottom of the order is
plan.
bad, too.
It is. It's really bad.
It's not hard when you throw 95 right down the middle.
So I did want to talk about what if Andre Palante is a little better than we give him credit for, and I think we still can because he's still been pretty good for them. So since coming up to the big leagues as a starter, Andre Palante has given the Cardinals in 8 starts now, 39 innings. He's given up like 35-ish hits, 36 now, and 14 earned runs, which is just over a 3.0 ERA. It's like a 3.2 ERA so far since becoming a full-time starter for the Cardinals again. Alex, this is something that they don't have to decide right now, but there is going to come a point in time in which they have to make some tough decisions, and this is Ollie's job is going to be really interesting in the next month or so, I would say. If this team adds a starter at the deadline, does Andre Palante come out of your rotation? Because he's been better than Lance Lynn. Like, definitively. There is no argument against Palante over Lance Lynn if we're just going by the results. One guy has been better than the other. But is that a move that this team makes?
Like, this team? No.
What do you do
Palante,
when you add that starter.
Palante goes down to Memphis and is a starting pitcher once again, so you could keep him stretched out. This team does not make that decision. If this was another team, Lance Lynn would probably be in your bullpen. Or you go a 6-man rotation, which I don't know how many teams are actually going to do that. But like we talked earlier in the show about the positionless players and the position guys. Lance Lynn's kind of a positionless player other than a starting pitcher. Like you can't put him into the bullpen. You're not going to use him as like a long man out of the bullpen for you.
I actually think he could work out of the bullpen. I don't. Because he's got swing and miss.
The problem is, who are you taking out of the bullpen for him?
Right now,
because Gio's going to go whenever you add a bullpen arm at the deadline. So are you putting him in there over like Chris Roycroft? Is he better in that role?
I don't think so. I think Roycroft's much better.
I think there's higher upside to Roycroft, but like if you had like the shuttle for the time being, you could do that.
The problem is there's no more shuttle.
Yeah.
Once you get rid of Roycroft, you no longer have anybody that can go up and down. If I'm not mistaken, I can't think of anybody else that you would be shuttling up and down.
Yeah. No. I mean, Palante absolutely, though.
John King, they could do if they wanted to.
Palante absolutely deserves to stay.
He's too good. I don't think you can shuttle him up and down. Yeah.
Palante deserves to stay in this rotation.
Yeah.
I mean, he is better than Lance Lynn. Lance Lynn, unfortunately, is a casualty when he steps onto the mound because you don't know if this game is going to be out of hand by the first inning. Andre Palante, I mean, although he's given up these hits to put him in a position, he just got a grounder to the pitcher and kept run at third base and might be able to get out of this inning with only 1 run scored. Yeah. So, like, Lance Lynn, this inning's going haywire fast. Palante doesn't walk a lot of guys. Palante doesn't give up those massively hard hits.
Keeps it on the ground.
Like, he is a Cardinals number 5 starter.
Also, he has a future here.
Yeah.
Like that's the other thing is if he is still around post deadline, if you don't have to use him to get what you need, he's a guy that could be in your rotation starting on opening day next year. Like he's not your opening day starter, but he could be the number 5 starter going into next season. He's cheap, cost controlled. You've developed him internally. Like that could be his role for you.
Waste another burn another $10 million on that spot in the rotation.
And this isn't to disrespect.
Don't pick up the Lance Lynn option.
It's not to disrespect Lance Lynn. Like Lance Lynn did his job. Lance Lynn did exactly what the Cardinals needed him to do. But now you've had somebody emerge better than him. I think it's pretty obvious that Lance Lynn should not be in the rotation.
Yeah, and the only reason I said bullpen, because you're right, it's a little crowded, is when you look at his splits. First right-handed hitters, he holds them to a 638 OPS, which is
that's pretty good.
Quick math, 17% below league average. So like you could find a lane for Lance Lynn out of the bullpen that wouldn't just be an innings eater if you wanted to. But again, it would be tough, and I think they probably will go path of least resistance and send Palante down.
And for what it's worth, Palante just gave up another hard hit. Yeah. It looks like this game has gotten away from him a little bit.
He's
given
just
up
doing
3
the
runs
Cardinal script. We like it close.
I do think it's worth noting.
3 runs is not 9 runs.
2 of the plays, 2 of the doubles in this inning are caught.
Yeah.
If you have Michael Siani playing in center, because Lars Nootbaar's in right, Alec Burleson didn't make the grab. It would have been a tough one, but I think Lars Nootbaar has a pretty decent chance to be able to get there.
Probably further that way because Siani can cover more ground.
And Michael Siani in center field makes the play that Nootbaar wasn't able to make in center. Now, this most recent one, nobody makes that play. That one was way too hard. That was a rocket. No, that one, there's no play to be made. No criticism whatsoever.
But you're not in that position.
Yeah, but the decision to not start Michael Siani in center field does have a trickle-down effect, and you're seeing tangible results of that by multiple runs potentially coming across the board that would not have if you had Siani in center. Now, it's also worth noting there was a infield single in this inning as well. It was a tough play for Palante, but that's another one.
But once again, you're not in this position if the first catch that Burleson couldn't make is caught by Lars Nootbaar because Siani's playing center, which is why everyone was saying we were getting angry earlier. That's why I want Siani out there.
He's Alex, that's T-Bone, I'm BK. Hey, if you guys missed anything from today's show, check it out on the podcast page, 101ESPN.com, and the free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. It's all presented by
Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers.
You can go there to hear our conversation from earlier today with Jon Morosi. The Fast Lane is coming up from 2 to 6. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow at 11 a.m. here on 101 ESPN.